Chapter 388. Chapter 428. Chapter 428 Heaven and Earth in a palace that did not belong to a minor kiliocosm or a medium kiliocosm. Something strange suddenly happened. A dark cloud suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the sky. This cloud had a radius of 1,000 feet and was as black as ink. There was a faint rumbling of thunder within it as it floated 1,000 feet above the 100 feet tall stone tablet. Occasionally, there would be a strong flash of light within it, like a lightning dragon shuttling back and forth within the cloud. Although this was the inner hall of the limitless void palace, this dark cloud was not created by Luo Fan's will. Instead, it was formed under the effect of some extremely mysterious rules. It was aimed at the stone tablet below. Luo Fan raised his head and looked at the dark cloud. There was no trace of doubt on his face, only a smile, as if everything was under his control. The supreme great Tao of the untainted world really repels things from the outer realm. It's just a complete Dharma skill, and it wants to break through the defense of the Wuji Palace and enter the palace to destroy it. This thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. Thinking of this, he raised his hand and waved. In the void, an infinite power suddenly appeared out of nowhere and directly hit the dark cloud above. The dark cloud was born from the supreme great Tao of the untainted world. It was specially created to enter the Wuji Palace and destroy the complete Dharma skill that did not belong to the untainted world. But after all, it was only a complete Dharma skill, and it was separated from the untainted world by a lot of time and space. Therefore, the power of the dark cloud was not very strong. The infinite power hit the dark cloud. The dark cloud could not withstand the powerful bombardment at all. In the blink of an eye, it broke into pieces and turned into small clouds that were about to disperse. Right at this moment, in the sea of lightning around the platform, an earthy yellow dragon that was 10,000 feet long suddenly rushed out. Although this divine dragon was formed by the earth element thunder, its scales were vivid and lifelike, just like a real divine dragon. There were even faint clouds gathering around its body. The yellow dragon was extremely fast. It directly rushed into the dark cloud that had been twisted into countless pieces. It swept around and opened its mouth to swallow. Not long later, the black cloud with a circumference of 1,000 feet was completely swallowed into its stomach. After swallowing the dark cloud into his stomach, his face revealed an incomparably human-like expression of dissatisfaction, as if he was still half full from a meal. Luo Fan didn't care about the appearance of this divine dragon condensed from earth thunder. The earth thunder twisted its body and fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, it went back into the thunder sea below. It instantly collapsed and completely merged into the thunder sea, disappearing without a trace. This can be considered as passing the tribulation. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. He raised his hand and clapped. The void changed. The 100 feet tall stone tablet in front of him quickly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it had shrunk to 3 inches tall. With a move, it had already arrived in front of Luo Fan and landed in his hand. The moment the stone tablet entered his hand, Luo Fan suddenly felt a mysterious power sweeping his mind. Under the search of this mysterious power, the self-heaven and earth technique in his mind shook slightly, as if it was slowly disappearing. Luo Fan had already expected such a change, so he was not surprised. He focused his mind, and the self-heaven and earth technique was like a rock. No matter how the mysterious power searched, it did not waver, nor did it disappear because of this. As expected, the primordial world has such a huge reaction to the appearance of this technique. The technique left in my mind will definitely produce power to erase it. Luo Fan thought and raised his hand to put the stone tablet into the universe in his sleeve. The mysterious power that acted on his mind and what was born from the supreme great Tao of the primordial world. Its purpose was to erase that technique from his memory. If it wasn't for the fact that Luo Fan had already attained the grand unity Tao fruit, his soul would be incomparably firm, and his Tao heart would be infinitely stable. Perhaps he would have forgotten about the self-heaven and earth technique the moment this mysterious power was born. After putting away the stone tablet and burying the self-heaven and earth technique in the depths of his memory, Luo Fan raised his hand and took the crystal ball with the strange life sealed in it. He raised his hand and pointed. The crystal ball-like seal instantly flashed and opened. From the original fist-sized crystal ball, it expanded to a diameter of 100 feet. The strange life also expanded to a height of 100 feet. Its physiological activities, which had been completely sealed, began to operate very slowly. Faint divine light shone from its 4 eyes again. Luo Fan did not wait for the strange life to completely wake up. He raised his hand and pointed. The strange life's body instantly collapsed. Golden light splattered everywhere, and countless pieces of flesh and blood instantly dyed the seal ball with a diameter of 100 feet golden. Within the golden flesh and blood, there was a fist-sized irregular crystal that seemed to be sparkling and translucent. This crystal was very similar to the legendary relic. In this relic, there were faint waves of vitality coming from it. There was also a very strange thought surging in it. It's actually in this form. It's indeed not something from the primordial world. Luo Fan looked at it with his true eyes of sun and moon. He already knew that this was the core of the strange life soul. It was also the origin of its life. It had similar functions to the souls and souls of the primordial world's living beings. He raised his hand and waved gently. A mysterious power appeared in the air. This relic, which was the size of a relic, directly passed through the layers of seals and arrived in his hand. When he touched the crystal, his hand felt that it was extremely tough. It was like a boulder that had been tempered by the astral winds of the 9 heavens for billions of years. It gave off an aura that could not be damaged or destroyed. As the crystal passed through the seal paused slightly. It rotated and compressed, shrinking back to the size of a fist. It turned into a golden crystal ball and floated in the air. At this moment, an extremely strong thought emerged from the crystal. If you dare to kill me, the Julie world will definitely not let your world off. Quickly release this exalt, and this exalt can still spare your life. Luo Fan could not be bothered with the thought of this life. He raised his hand and pointed. A strong thought rushed out, and the thought hidden in the crystal let out an extremely sharp scream. Then there was no more sound. At the same time, a faint golden smoke came out of the crystal. This smoke seemed to contain many inconceivable mysteries. It floated in the air and even tried to condense into all kinds of special shapes. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed again. The golden crystal ball in front of him rotated and sucked in all the golden smoke. As the smoke was sucked in, the color of the crystal ball began to roil. In the blink of an eye, it had become golden on the inside and transparent on the outside. It looked like a raw egg. Seeing this, Luo Fan covered it with his left hand, and the crystal ball entered his sleeve universe. The spiritual sense has been removed, so there are only memories left. It's time to see what kind of world the Julie world is, Luo Fan thought to himself. With a thought, the hall began to change. The golden crystal in his hand floated up and slowly merged with the air. As the crystal merged with the air quickly changed. In the blink of an eye, the world turned upside down. This place no longer seemed to be the strange palace inside the Wuji Palace. Instead, it seemed to have appeared in a boundless, strange world. This world was infinitely wide. The earth was boundless and the sky was infinitely high. There were countless stars and floating islands in the sky. This world was not filled with connate essence chi or chaotic essence chi. Instead, it was filled with extremely dense 5 elements essence chi and all kinds of free energy. The place where Luo Fan appeared was on a tall mountain between the heavens and the earth. Looking down, the mountain was at least 30,000 to 40,000 kilometers tall. At a glance, the terrain within a radius of tens of millions of kilometers was reflected in his eyes. Although the mountain was already 30,000 to 40,000 kilometers tall, when he looked up, he still could not see the end of the sky. The sky was still infinitely high. In the sky, there were 9 suns arranged according to a strange law, forming a pattern that looked like the 9 palaces. Among the 9 suns, there were stars shining brightly. Stars that could not be found in the untainted world were arranged in a complicated pattern, like a huge passage. The 9 suns in the sky were constantly emitting endless light and heat. What shone down was not the essence of the sun, nor was it the true fire of the sun. Instead, it was a kind of 5 elements essence chi. The essence chi that each sun emitted was strangely different from the other suns. Is this the Julie world? Luo Fan looked at this scene, which was definitely not something that could appear in the untainted world, and thought to himself. This scene was the scene of the Julie world that Luo Fan had restored with the help of the strange life's memory. This was the strange palace inside the Wuji Palace, and the palace was a primordial unity treasure that Luo Fan had refined. The changes of light, shadow, and the void were naturally under Luo Fan's control. It was extremely easy to transform it into the various scenes in the memory. With a thought from Luo Fan, the light and shadow around him changed rapidly. It was as if he was flying up continuously. As he flew higher and higher, the scene he saw became wider and wider. In a short while, he had already reached a height of 1,000,000 miles. However, there was a layer of strange barrier that prevented him from continuing upwards. This barrier was very strange. It seemed to contain various kinds of energy similar to the astral wind, thunder, and fire of the untainted world. It played the role of the astral wind, thunder, and fire of the untainted world, isolating the world below from the starry sky above. With a thought, Luo Fan's figure continued to move upwards, passing through the barrier and entering the void above it. In the blink of an eye, it was as if he had entered another world. As expected, the strange energy similar to the astral wind, thunder, and fire formed an energy layer around him. As he continued upwards, the density of this strange energy became denser and denser, and more changes occurred. It condensed into all kinds of strange creatures, forming all kinds of strange races, foraging, fighting, rushing about, cultivating. The lively scene was even more than the astral wind, thunder, and fire of the untainted world. These creatures did not react to Luo Fan's arrival at all. It was as if they did not notice Luo Fan's existence at all. This was also natural. After all, this was only a scene reconstructed from the memory of that strange being. It was only a kind of 3-dimensional simulation, although it was thousands of times more vivid and detailed than an ordinary 3-dimensional simulation. All the scenes and all the creatures were just simple images. Naturally, they would not have the slightest reaction to Luo Fan's arrival. Luo Fan continued upward. In the blink of an eye, he traveled another 100,000 miles. He passed through 36 energy layers similar to the astral wind, thunder, and fire, and entered the boundless starry sky. This starry sky was not like the starry sky of the untainted world, which was like another boundless space. Instead, it was like the starry sky of the universe that Luo Fan had seen in his previous life. The energy layers similar to the astral wind, thunder, and fire were more like the atmosphere. After entering this place, Luo Fan looked down. He discovered that the Julie world below him was boundless. It was like an extremely wide plain. Even with his eyesight, he could not see the end of it. I'm afraid it's thousands of times wider than the untainted world. Luo Fan looked at it, and a hint of understanding flashed in his mind. He raised his head and looked into the void. At the end of the starry sky, there were 9 gigantic suns hanging in the starry sky, as if they had existed since ancient times. They emitted endless primordial chi, light, and heat. Luo Fan's mind was filled with endless vigilance. At the same time, he felt an indescribable excitement. This vigilance came from the fact that there was such a vast and powerful world in the chaos space. Moreover, there were living beings in this world who had crossed the chaos space and entered the untainted world. He was excited because he was not alone in the chaos space. The untainted world was not unique to the chaos space. With a thought, Luo Fan's body turned, and in the blink of an eye, he returned to the mountain that was 30 to 40,000 miles away from where he had first appeared. Previously, when he observed the world, He paid more attention to the scale of the world and the energy in the void. Now that he had returned, he paid attention to the vitality of the world. The Jilly world was different from the untainted world. The world here seemed to have been developed for billions of years, and it was already very mature. The entire world was filled with endless vitality. All kinds of strange vegetation covered the mountains and flatlands, and there were also all kinds of strange living beings living in the vegetation. There were tens of thousands of races living on the mountain that Luo Fan was on. There were even dozens of intelligent living beings among them. These intelligent living beings all had humanoid bodies. Of course, they had a few more hands, legs, eyes, and strange changes in their skin. They had many different characteristics, but it was inevitable. Among these living beings, Luo Fan discovered the existence of the strange living beings that had come to the untainted world. The level of civilization of those intelligent living beings varied, but most of them were similar to the feudal civilization of ancient China. Apart from that, there were many powerful auras hidden on the mountain that was 30 to 40,000 kilometers high. Most of these powerful auras were relatively weak to Luo Fan, which meant that they were at Luo Chunyang's level. However, there were also one or two auras that were equivalent to the auras of innate gods. This made Luo Fan greatly admire the strength of the Jilly world. The living beings hidden on the mountain were not very powerful, and they seemed to be far inferior to the untainted world. But don't forget, compared to the entire Jilly Great World, this mountain peak was like a grain of sand in the Ganges River. And on this grain of sand, there was such a powerful existence. From this, it could be inferred how powerful the power of the Jilly world was. I wonder how many living beings that are more powerful than me exist in this world. This thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. With a thought, he raised his eyes and looked in a direction. The moment he fixed his eyes on that direction, the void changed automatically. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at a place that was hundreds of millions of kilometers away from the mountain. There was an incomparably huge city there. The city covered an area of tens of millions of kilometers. It was enough to contain dozens of Earths. The city walls were thousands of kilometers tall and dozens of kilometers thick. There were hundreds of millions of living beings living in the city. Among them, there were millions of powerful auras. Most of these powerful auras were only at Luo Chunyang's level, which was the level of living beings that had not attained Tao. However, there were tens of thousands of living beings that had attained Tao. The strongest aura had even reached the peak of the golden immortal realm. It was only one step away from attaining the grand unity Tao fruit. Of course, this was only Luo Fan's evaluation of their strength. It was not that they also cultivated the Tao fruit and wanted to attain the grand unity Tao fruit. Seeing this, Luo Fan's thoughts moved, and a lot of information flowed through his mind. As the information flowed through, although Luo Fan's Tao heart was firm and he had seen many things in the untainted world, he could not help but gasp. There was also a strong sense of worry in his eyes. In the memories of that strange being, this seems to be just a small city. The true power of the Jilly world is still the powerful existence that created the dojo in the chaos. As Luo Fan thought of this, the worry in his eyes became even stronger. After all, he was not in the true Jilly world. He was just wandering in the memories of that strange being. Just now, with a thought, the information that flowed into his mind was some of the strange being's memories. It was also some explanations about the Jilly world. Seeing this information, Luo Fan finally understood the basic situation of the Jilly Great World. He understood that this city, which he thought was grand beyond imagination, was actually just a small city. He understood the true strength of the Jilly Great World. Who is spying on my Jilly world? Just as Luo Fan was sucking in a breath of cold air, a voice that sounded like the voice of the heavens suddenly reverberated between heaven and earth. Chapter 389. The Great Path of Independence. As the voice rang out, Luo Fan suddenly felt an incomparably powerful force appear out of thin air, acting on the endless light and shadows around him. Under this power, the originally incomparably complete and seemingly real scene of the Julie world collapsed with a loud bang. At the same time, a ray of golden light rushed down from the end of the boundless starry sky above the 33 layers of energy, covering Luo Fan with a loud bang. At this moment, an indescribable sense of danger suddenly flashed through Luo Fan's mind. This sense of danger was extremely strong, almost reaching the strongest sense of danger that Luo Fan had ever felt since he came to the untainted world. This was a crisis of life and death. At this moment, Luo Fan did not hesitate to summon the power of the entire Void Wuji Palace. The complete minor kiliacosm, the embryonic form of the 2,999 minor kiliacosm, suddenly surged with an incomparably violent change in that medium-sized world. The wind and clouds surged, the void changed, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. An indescribable world defense force was added to Luo Fan's body. At the same time, Luo Fan activated the true eyes of sun and moon to its limit. Around him, in the direction of the golden light, time and space violently twisted and changed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, there was an extremely subtle difference in time and space between him and the area 10 feet around him, which was also outside the range of the world's defense force. The two of them became two completely different spacetimes. Any living creature or power between these two spacetimes would find it impossible to communicate with each other without Luo Fan's mental control. Even so, the incomparably strong sense of danger to his life was extremely strong. It was so strong that even Luo Fan's mind trembled slightly. Even the connate, inextinguishable spiritual light hidden in the depths of his mind shrank rapidly and trembled violently, as if it could disintegrate at any time. This must be the powerful existence that created the Tao field in the Jiuli world in the chaos. It is a powerful existence comparable to a cultivator who has attained primordial chaos Tao fruit. Only this kind of existence can threaten the innate, inextinguishable spirit light. Luo Fan's mind was instantly enlightened. Under this enlightenment, the Tai fruit of the way in his body collapsed with a loud bang, turning into a powerful magical power that quickly circulated in his body. It circled around an extremely profound and complicated path, and in the blink of an eye, it made his body shine with an unbreakable luster. After saying so much, in reality, less than a split second had passed since the voice rang out. At this moment, the golden light suddenly descended and enveloped Luo Fan. Under this golden light, the distorted space-time layer created by the true eyes of sun and moon suddenly collapsed. The void twisted and time changed. The completely different space-time within a radius of 3 feet around Luo Fan's body was pulled back to normal. However, the golden light was not obstructed in the slightest during this process and continued to descend with a loud rumble. It landed directly on the defensive power of the world. This was a complete minor kiliacosm with 2,999 minor kiliacosms. The defensive power of a dimensional realm that was condensed from almost all the power of a dimensional realm didn't fare much better under the golden light. In the blink of an eye, it collapsed layer by layer. The defensive power of the world continued to disintegrate, and the defensive power of the complete minor kiliacosms and dimensional realms continued to weaken. Following this change, the entire everlasting palace violently trembled. The world violently trembled as endless power was extracted from them and gathered in the strange palace. This made the world seem a bit dim, as if it was about to collapse. As for the complete minor kiliacosms and dimensional realms, the changes were even more intense and terrifying. Within the dimensional realm and the minor kiliacosms, the void violently distorted. Wind surged, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Every living being in each world felt a sense of danger, as if the end of the world was approaching. All the origin energy within the two worlds quickly disappeared. Even the most stupid of living beings could sense that an incomparably dangerous change was occurring. The mysterious degree of the golden light was beyond Luo Fan's imagination. The power contained in it wasn't strong. At most, it was equivalent to the power of the peak of the golden immortal realm. However, it contained an indescribably strong willpower. This willpower was vast and boundless, like the universe and the supreme great way. It was even not inferior to the Pangu that Luo Fan had seen in Pangu's original spirit, who could split the heavens and the earth. Driven by this willpower, the power of the peak of the golden immortal realm erupted with an effect beyond the imagination of all living beings. Although the defensive power of the 2,999 prototypes of worlds, a small kiliacosm and a medium kiliacosm, was hundreds of millions of times stronger than this power, it only weakened the power contained in the golden light by 999,999,999,999,999,999% of the power contained in the golden light. The willpower controlled a power equivalent to the power of an innate god who had just achieved the Tao. It broke through all the defenses and directly bombarded Luo Fan's body. It drilled into the top of his head through the top of his head. The moment the golden light touched his body, Luo Fan's sea of consciousness suddenly shook violently. In this shaking, the power in the sea of consciousness that was originally completely under Luo Fan's control suddenly changed strangely. It quickly gathered in the void and continued to condense. In the blink of an eye, it turned into the image of a strange creature that was indomitable between heaven and earth. It was a strange creature with a human body and a snake's tail. It looked like a middle-aged man with 3 eyes and a body covered in flames. When this creature appeared in the sea of consciousness, the entire sea of consciousness was like a drop of water splashed into a pot of hot oil. It suddenly churned violently. Even the void of the sea of consciousness seemed to be unable to bear its existence. Countless cracks, like a spider's web, constantly appeared around the creature's body. Although the cracks were constantly mending because of the existence of Luo Fan's divine soul, it couldn't stop the cracks from appearing in the void. It could only mend again and again after appearing. After this strange creature appeared, its 3 eyes seemed very dull and blank. It seemed like it was just a condensation of power and didn't have any characteristics of life. At this moment, the golden light that was only equivalent to the power of an innate god had already caused the defense that Luo Fan's magic power had created, which was comparable to that of Xuanji Child, to instantly collapse. It directly caused Luo Fan's body to collapse. Under this golden light, his originally indestructible body turned into dust in just an instant. It collapsed like sand, and he lost his human form, and his magic power condensed again into a Tai Dao fruit that seemed to contain the endless mysteries of the world. It enveloped some mysterious existence within it. Inside the Tai Dao fruit was Luo Fan's sea of consciousness. Luo Fan's magic power was more than 1,000,000 times stronger than the power contained in the golden light. On the other hand, the magic energy circulated according to the supreme defensive technique in the Tao fruit and the Tao scripture, and it gave rise to an effect that was over 1,000,000 times more powerful than ordinary magic energy. However, it was unable to block the golden light that was controlled by a vast will. Even though the power contained within the golden light had already disappeared without a trace, it was still impossible for Su Mo to escape. However, the vast will contained within the golden light, which was separated by an unknown amount of time and space, was still unscathed as it charged towards the grand unity fruit of the way. It wanted to disintegrate the Tai Dao fruit and rush into the Tai Dao fruit. It wanted to rush into the sea of consciousness that was tightly wrapped by the Tai Dao fruit. It seemed like it wanted to merge with the strange creature inside the sea of consciousness and completely erase Luo Fan. The change just now was unimaginably fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, Luo Fan's body, which he had cultivated for tens of millions of years, suddenly collapsed. All of the worlds within the Wuji Palace, including the defensive power condensed by the embryonic world, were completely shattered. If it wasn't for the fact that the power of the golden light was limited and it was too fast, the destruction of the defensive power didn't spread to all the worlds and embryonic worlds. Otherwise, the entire Wuji Palace would have been completely destroyed and none of the worlds would be left. Even so, all of the rudimentary worlds within the limitless Void Palace were exceptionally dim. The minor dimensions and dimensional dimensions were in chaos. The world was shaking and nature was changing. It was unknown just how many lives had died within. Although it was such a drastic change, and even his body had been completely destroyed, Luo Fan still didn't have a trace of fear. Even at this moment, his mind was still calm, and there were countless flashes of light within it. In fact, there was even a little bit of joy in it. So, this is the application of a higher level of power. As long as I can endure this attack, I will definitely make unimaginable progress. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. The mind was an extremely mysterious existence. It wasn't an entity, nor was it an energy, but a carrier of consciousness. As long as Luo Fan's soul existed, even if his body was destroyed, even if his sea of consciousness collapsed, his mind would still exist. Therefore, at this moment, although only the Tai fruit of Wei was left to wrap around his sea of consciousness, Luo Fan's mind was still unharmed. There's such a core. Although it's still crude, it has the meaning of evolving the Tao of harmony. A majestic voice, as if the sky was shaking, came from the will, and Luo Fan's mind directly received it. Evolving the Tao of harmony. Is this the final achievement of the Tao of fruit of Wei? Luo Fan's mind moved, and such a thought flashed through his mind. Unfortunately, it's still a bit lacking. Although your future isn't bad, if you dare to spy on the world of Julie with such a perfect core, then there's no place for you. The voice changed. As it spoke, it rapidly pounced forward. It looked as if it was about to submerge Luo Fan's extreme unity Tao fruit. It looked as if it was about to rush through the extreme unity Tao fruit and enter Luo Fan's sea of consciousness. At this moment, the strange life with a human body, snake tail, and 3 eyes in Luo Fan's sea of consciousness trembled slightly. There seemed to be a faint light flashing in its 3 eyes. The dazed expression on its face was greatly reduced. It seemed like it was about to wake up from a dream, but it also seemed like a dead object was slowly gaining intelligence and becoming a living thing. At the same time, an increasingly powerful and terrifying power rippled out from the 3-eyed life with a human body, snake tail, and snake tail. The spiderweb-like cracks that appeared around the life's body became even denser and more difficult to close. Under this impact, the whole sea of consciousness was about to collapse. Seeing this, Luo Fan understood. This body must be condensed to welcome the arrival of that will. It's the bearing of that will. Understanding this, the joy in Luo Fan's mind became more obvious, and at the same time, a sense of urgency arose. What was urgent was that the will could produce such a terrifying effect simply by being carried by the power of the golden immortal realm. It could even destroy the mini Kiliacosm and medium Kiliacosm in the Void Wuji Palace, and even turn his body into powder. If he could get the support of this body that was condensed from the power of the Tai fruit of Wei in his body, which was tens of thousands of times stronger than the power of the golden immortal realm, then what kind of incredible level of power would it be able to display? But what made him happy was that this body was obviously formed by the power of the golden immortal realm. When the will approached, it was naturally condensed by some mysterious law, and it contained the profound cultivation secrets of the vast will. If he could block the vast will outside, this body would fall into his hands, and he could refine it into an avatar. He might even be able to study the profound cultivation secrets of the vast will. At this time, Luo Fan didn't hold back anymore. Following Jihao's thought, the world inside Pangu's bone, which stood in the center of Jihao's spiritual space, quaked suddenly. A misty, mysterious stream of light that seemed to contain everything in the world surged straight out of Jihao's spiritual space. While flowing in Jihao's spiritual space, the the space of Ji-Hao's spiritual space seemed to be stabilized slightly. The speed at which the cracks appeared and spread like spiderweb slowed down by 100 times. Then, the spiritual light suddenly rushed out and disappeared from the sea of consciousness from a very mysterious position. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in the Tai fruit of Wei of Luo Fan. Then, it rushed out of the Tai fruit of Wei and rushed towards the vast that covered the sky and the earth. This is the inextinguishable spiritual light. There's actually an inextinguishable spiritual light in this world. Suddenly, an exclamation that seemed to contain infinite surprise and regret came from the vast will. The stream of pre-world spirit light that surged straight out of Pangu's bone was the pre-world spirit light that Luo Fan spent millions of years to create and even made Luo Ho subdue him for it. As the will rumbled, the inextinguishable spiritual light had already collided with the vast will. There was no sound, no light, no shadow. In an instant, that vast will collapsed with a loud bang. After that, it seemed to be unable to withstand the repulsive force of the infinite space-time. In just an instant, it disappeared without a trace, hidden beyond the infinite space-time, and finally completely disappeared from Luo Fan's perception range. After the innate, inextinguishable spirit light was activated, it turned into a band of light that constantly circled around Luo Fan's Tai Dao fruit. There seemed to be a sense of joy within it. At this moment, everything in the surroundings had calmed down. The light and shadows of the Jiuli world had completely collapsed the moment the vast will and golden light appeared. Luo Fan had also returned to the platform in the depths of the strange palace. However, after the vast will disappeared, this platform was the only thing left in this place. The strange palace that was higher than the medium, minor, and embryonic minor worlds had been completely erased. The sea of lightning that had been calm before now surged violently like a tsunami. It was incomparably violent, but also incomparably unstable. Below the platform, in the depths of the sea of lightning, there were countless fine cracks on the embryo egg that represented the dimensional world. Although they hadn't turned into cracks and caused the embryo egg to collapse, it had clearly suffered great damage. In the depths of the embryo egg, there were even more cracks on the embryo egg that represented a complete minor world. This meant that it had suffered even more damage. In addition, the 2,999 embryonic minor kiliocosms around the minor kiliocosm egg were also shaking, as if they could collapse at any moment. Those who have attained primordial chaos Tao fruits do indeed possess formidable might. All I need to do is think of their name in a memory, and they can sense it. They can even transmit their will through that memory and use the power of the memory carrier to attack. As Luo Fan sensed the changes within the everlasting palace, he sighed with emotion. Previously, the situation had been urgent, and he hadn't been able to figure out what was going on. Now that it had passed, he thought about it for a moment and understood why it had happened. The situation before was clearly because when he was wandering through the memories of that strange life, he had thought of the name of the life that had created the Tao field in the primal chaos of the Ninely Great World. As a result, the powerful life had sensed it and used the memories of that strange life to send its will through the endless primal chaos and space to descend upon his everlasting palace. It had even controlled all of that strange life's power to kill him. Such an inconceivably powerful divine ability and vast power had completely exceeded Luo Fan's imagination. After thinking for a moment, Luo Fan's thoughts moved. The Tai Dao fruit expanded and contracted, and a mysterious and indescribable change appeared in the void. As this happened, countless tiny specks of dust rapidly gathered towards the primordial Tao fruit from all directions. Chapter 390. Body instincts. Before long, Luo Fan's body reappeared as if it had never been broken in the first place. Even the strength of his body was no different from before. The Tai fruit of Wei's had even sunk into his dantian. When the changes subsided, Luo Fan slowly opened his eyes. Golden and silver light flickered in his eyes. Faint fear and joy appeared in his eyes. With a thought, A golden crystal appeared in the air. It hovered in front of Luo Fan, just like before, and it seemed no different from before. Luo Fan opened his right hand, and the relic slowly descended. In the blink of an eye, it landed in his hand. However, the moment the cerulite crystal came into contact with his right palm, countless fine cracks suddenly appeared on the crystal. Like a silk net, or even a silk cocoon, they wrapped around the crystal. After that, the crystal turned into powder. It transformed into a puff of smoke that dispersed into the surroundings. As the competition progressed, the fine powder continued to disperse. After flying 3 to 4 inches away from its original position, it became so small that it could not be seen with the naked eye. The smoke also completely disappeared during this process, as if it had fused with the void. As expected, all the power has been exhausted by that will. Luo Fan's eyes swiveled, and a hint of understanding flashed through his mind. After a moment of realization, his mind moved slightly. He spread out his left hand, and a fist-sized golden crystal ball appeared out of thin air in his hand from the universe in his sleeve. It was the seal that Luo Fan had used to seal the body of the strange life form. The seal was rapidly changing. The golden light within it faded at an unimaginable speed, as if the golden flesh and blood within it was continuously disappearing. In less than a breath's time, the golden crystal ball had completely turned into a transparent crystal ball. Even the flesh and blood that has already left the body can be converted into power and used. Such a great magic is indeed incredible. Luo Fan's pupil shrank slightly as he looked at this scene. As soon as he finished thinking, his left hand shook, and the seal that was like a crystal ball collapsed with a bang. It transformed into countless fine threads that were like spider webs that erupted from his left hand, and they covered the heavens and the earth as they surged out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they enveloped the entire hall, and then they trembled lightly a few times before completely fusing into space and vanishing without a trace. The seal was condensed from the great power contained in the void of the primordial world. Since the thing it had sealed had disappeared, there was naturally no need for the seal to exist anymore. Although the great power of the void was nothing to the infinite void palace, it was still a bit of benefit, and it could not be wasted. After dealing with the strange life form, Luo Fan's eyes revealed a rare hint of excitement. Let me see what's so special about that powerful creature, which was able to create a dojo in the chaos. This thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. After this thought flashed across his mind, he slowly closed his eyes and sent his spirit into the world of his spiritual sea. At this very moment, the scene in the world of his spiritual sea had stabilized completely. The entire space had stabilized, without any sign of unsteadiness. The sky, the ground, the flowers, the trees, and everything else in the world of his spiritual sea had been restored. As for the pre-world inextinguishable spirit light that pushed back the great spirit power earlier, it had already surged into the Pan-Gu bone when his body was rebuilt. In the entire world of his spiritual sea, apart from the embodiment of darkness and the square seal, there was another being that didn't belong to the world of his spiritual sea. It was an enormous body with a human body and a snake tail and 3 eyes. At the moment, this body was frozen in the world of his spiritual sea. Its 3 eyes were filled with confusion, and lifelessness, as if it were a dead thing. A powerful being in the Jili world that was able to create a dojo in the chaos. The Pan-Gu bone raised its head. From the 2 enormous holes on its face, golden and silver light had been shaking slightly, like a pair of real eyes, staring at the body in front of it. After the vast will was repelled, this body was about to collapse and disappear along with it. However, this place was still Luo Fan's sea of knowledge. Although this body was opposite to the vast will, and because it had gathered the power of the entire sea of knowledge, it was still difficult for it to come and go as it pleased within the sea of knowledge. Therefore, after the vast will left, Luo Fan used the power of the entire sea of consciousness to lock the body that was about to dissipate into the sea of consciousness, keeping it intact and unable to dissipate. Although he had used up almost all of the power in his sea of consciousness, causing his ability to control the sea of consciousness to fall to the lowest point in history, the result was quite remarkable. This magical body, which was generated by some kind of mysterious natural law to welcome the great spirit power, finally stabilized in Jihao's spiritual sea after the spirit power left. Luo Fan didn't hesitate. The golden and silver light in the eyes of this Pan Gu bone, which was transformed from his soul, suddenly quaked and transformed into a golden and silver light, darting out of the pair of eyes. The golden light flashed across the furthest distance of Luo Fan's spiritual space, directly towards that strange creature with a human body, a snake tail, and 3 eyes. Within a blink of an eye, the golden and silver light darted straight into the 3rd eye of this body, which was the eye between the eyebrows. This golden and silver light was generated by Luo Fan's willpower. It wasn't his entire spirit power, nor was it his soul, but it still represented some sort of embodiment of Luo Fan. Even though it was only embodiment of his willpower, at the instant the thought formed by the incarnation rushed into the 3rd eye, the 3 eyes of the strange body with a human body and snake tail suddenly lit up. At the same time, a furious aura suddenly spread out from the bottom of the mountain. An inexhaustible power burst from this body. Within a single breath, the space of this spiritual sea world was torn into countless pieces. Even the power of the entire sea of consciousness had already locked onto this body, preventing it from moving. However, this body still easily tore open the void of the sea of consciousness world. Roar, an extremely strange roar that seemed to be able to shake the world, came from the mouth of the body. The body waved its hands as if it wanted to grab something, but it could not grab anything. The surrounding space was shattered into countless pieces. Along with this change, Luo Fan's spiritual sea world suddenly became incomparably chaotic. The world, which had just stabilized, was shredded again. The entire earth was rolling like a tsunami. The flowers, trees, and all kinds of terrains, which had just recovered, were turned into powder at the first moment. All living beings, which were created by Luo Fan's willpower, were destroyed within a single moment. There was even a black hole that was getting bigger and bigger, expanding in all directions around the body. The entire spiritual sea world had been quaking and rolling, seeming to collapse at any moment. Seeing this, Luo Fan controlled Pan Gu's bone to open its mouth and let out a roar that sounded like the quaking of the great Tao. This roar seemed to be tangible. Starting from the mouth of Pan Gu's bone, it spread to all directions, reached the end of the spiritual sea world, and then bounced back, strengthening the roar towards the direction of that strange body. Within a moment, this roar that sounded like the quaking of the great Tao touched the expanding black hole and pressed it down. The black hole shrank ceaselessly. Where the black hole shrank, the space condensed again, and on the ground, all kinds of terrains, flowers, and trees reappeared. This roar seemed to be tangible. Eventually, it gathered around that strange body and formed a silhouette that only covered that strange body. The roar echoed in the silhouette, shaking that strange body and making it quiver intensely. However, even so, that strange body seemed to be incomparably angry. It seemed to have come back to life, struggling and clawing in the space. The space where it clawed had already been collapsing and shattering. But because of the roar, the space quickly condensed back to normal. Under Luo Fan's will, a pre-world undying spirit light dazzled straight out of the world inside Pan Gu's bone. Within a blink of an eye, it crossed the furthest distance of the spiritual sea world and reached the strange body. The light suddenly condensed into a tens of thousands of meters wide, disc-shaped light sphere above the head of the strange body. The light sphere spun slowly, releasing a magical power that enveloped the strange body. Compared to the strange body, this tens of thousands of meters wide disc was extremely tiny, like a sesame seed to an adult. However, The strange power that hung down from this extremely small disk was extremely effective against this body. Enveloped by the power, the strange body paused instantly. Its 3 eyes were filled with endless violence and anger, but it couldn't move even an inch. Raging roars that sounded like the wrath of the entire world came out of that giant mouth, which couldn't be closed. Seeing this, Luo Fan relaxed and controlled Pangu's bone to close its mouth. Gradually, the roars that sounded like the shaking of the great Tao faded away. As the roars faded away, the entire spiritual sea world changed naturally. The world changed, and soon, the spiritual sea returned to normal. This spiritual sea world was the space that Luo Fan's soul was attached to. It was in between reality and illusion. It seemed to be both real and illusory, but neither was it real or illusory, and yet neither was it real or illusory. It was incomparably magical. Everything in this spiritual sea world, including the landscape and all living beings, were the projections of Luo Fan's soul. As long as Luo Fan's soul was not destroyed, his heart of Tao was not damaged, and his cultivation was not destroyed, even if this spiritual sea world was completely destroyed, it would recover at an extremely high speed. It's not its original body, not even a clone or a clone, but already contains an incredible power that allows it to destroy the world at will. Being invaded by a spiritual power, it can actually automatically activate its power. Such a thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. After observing the performance of this body under the power of the innate, inextinguishable spirit light, Luo Fan was slightly relieved. With a single thought of his Jihao's spiritual power attached to the clone of Pangu's will, which had drilled into the 3rd eye of this body, instantly, he came to an indescribably magical world. His state of mind had entered an indescribable state. No thoughts, no one, no self, no time, no space, no matter, no energy. Everything seemed to cease to exist. If one had to describe this state, it would be emptiness. Everything was emptiness. Thoughts were emptiness. People were emptiness. Time was emptiness. Space was emptiness. Matter was space-time. Energy was emptiness. After an unknown period of time, a bolt of lightning flashed across his eyes and woke him up from that indescribable state. Finally, he saw the surroundings clearly. Around him, up, down, left, right, and in all directions, everything was gray and hazy. In this gray and hazy world, everything seemed to exist, and everything seemed to exist, and nothing seemed to exist. This feeling, could it be chaos? Such a thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. However, the speed at which this thought flashed was hundreds of millions of times slower than before, making Luo Fan feel extremely strenuous. It was as if he was carrying hundreds of millions of tons of weight and climbing a mountain that was hundreds of millions of miles tall. Not only did he have to use up all his strength with every step, he could never see the end. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged, and an incomparably huge vortex appeared above his head. At first, this vortex was extremely small, like a speck of dust. However, after it appeared, it grew at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it had grown to a diameter of 10,000 miles, covering the sky and earth, as if the entire world had turned into a vortex. In this vortex, the surrounding gray and hazy existence continued to thicken and transform in the process, as if it was evolving into some unimaginable existence. Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation slowly raised its head and looked at the overwhelming vortex above. The center of this vortex was facing Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation. The existence that was evolving was right above his head. A thunderous sound that struck the great Tao resounded. Accompanying this sound was a white bolt of lightning that seemed to have no beginning and no end, and it directly tore through the endless gray existences in all directions. After this lightning bolt, it seemed as if a world had appeared behind the gray and hazy existence. This world was incomparably mysterious. It seemed to be a void, but it also seemed to contain everything that Luo Fan thought about. It seemed as if it was boundless, yet it also seemed as small as a speck of dust. This sound and this lightning bolt disappeared in a flash. However, after a flash, in the center of the vortex, the thing that had been constantly evolving had finally fully evolved. It was a strange life form. It was also a life form that Luo Fan was incomparably familiar with. It had a human body, a snake tail, and 3 eyes. It was the body that had appeared in Luo Fan's sea of consciousness. After this life form appeared, the vortex that was tens of thousands of miles in diameter suddenly collapsed. Without any process, it went from covering the sky and the earth to not leaving a trace. In the blink of an eye, it had disappeared without a trace. At the same time, everything that Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation could see was once again covered by a gray and hazy mist, once again turning into a chaotic scene. In an instant, Luo Fan came to a sudden realization. What woke me up before was this bolt of lightning and thunder. However, although he had woken up, he still did not know what this bolt of lightning and thunder was. Why did it have such unbelievable power? The strange life form that had evolved from the vortex was less than 10 feet tall, but it was the same height as Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation, which was also a normal human body. Roar! After this strange life form appeared, it burst out an incomparably tyrannical and mournful roar. Although this roar did not sound like a human's voice, it contained some kind of incredible power, causing the surrounding strange landscape that seemed to be chaotic to produce endless changes, as if the seawater was blown by a strong wind and caused huge waves. All of a sudden, Luo Fan suddenly found that his thinking seemed to have sped up a lot. It seemed that the weight on his back had been reduced a lot, and the mountain that he had climbed seemed to have become much shorter. However, the weight was still there, and the mountain was still towering. The strange life form's 3 eyes burst out a kind of seemingly dull, but incomparably angry and tyrannical divine light. Its body descended, and as it waved its hands, it bombarded towards Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation with a momentum that could destroy the world. As its hands waved, the surrounding landscape that seemed to be chaotic naturally evolved into endless scenes of slaughter and destruction. It seemed that the whole world and everything in the world were responding to the movements of this strange life form. Everything seemed to be changing with the movements of this strange life form. Luo Fan's thinking was slow, and he had the advantage in this place. As soon as the thought of dodging came up in his mind, the strange life form's hands had already grabbed the consciousness incarnation. In an instant, there was an indescribable intense pain that drowned all of his thoughts. This kind of pain was not pain, nor was it pain that could be described with soreness and itchiness, but a kind of pain that came from a mind that could not be described with words. It was also a pain that no words could describe. After this pain, Luo Fan only felt that this consciousness incarnation collapsed with a loud bang, turning into hundreds of millions of specks of dust. After that, he noticed that he'd once again entered a state of emptiness. Emptiness, 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 emptiness. Everything seemed to have ceased to exist in a state of emptiness. After an unknown period of time, it seemed that it was only a moment, but it also seemed that tens of millions of years, hundreds of millions of years had passed. Suddenly, another bolt of lightning flashed in front of him, waking him up from that indescribable state. After waking up, Luo Fan found that his consciousness incarnation had actually condensed again, and the surrounding scene was so gray, as if nothing existed, but also as if everything existed. Chapter 391. Sea of Consciousness. The whirlpool continued to grow, and before long, it had grown to a diameter of 10,000 kilometers. Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation was still a little confused about the situation, but that did not stop him from thinking. What happened just now? With this thought, he felt that his thoughts seemed to be a little faster than before. Although the difference was very small, it was extremely obvious to Luo Fan. At this moment, another rumble that sounded like the quaking of the Grand Tao rang out. Then, a white bolt of lightning that seemed to have no beginning or end suddenly appeared, tearing through the entire chaotic scene. After the lightning, it was as if there was nothing there, but it also seemed as if everything in Luo Fan's memory existed in the void. After that, the whirlpool disappeared into thin air, and a strange creature descended from the center of the whirlpool, heading towards Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation. Everything was the same as before. Other than Luo Fan's own thoughts speeding up a little, there was nothing different. The three-eyed creature with a human body, a snake's tail, and a pair of eyes were still filled with anger and brutality. It was still waving its hands, as if it was driving the world and the universe, and, as if it wanted to destroy the world, it struck Luo Fan's consciousness incarnation. In the instant that he could not dodge in time, it struck Luo Fan's body, causing this consciousness incarnation to collapse with a loud bang, allowing Luo Fan to once again enter the void. After an unknown period of time, it seemed like only an instant, but also like billions of years. Another round of reincarnation appeared. Lightning, whirlpool, lightning, strange life, collapse, void. This cycle repeated, like an endless cycle that would never break and would never disappear. After this cycle of 81 times, the speed of Luo Fan's thoughts was much faster than when he first encountered it. Under the effect of this accelerated thinking, he finally understood what had happened, and he had a rough idea of the situation he was in. When I rushed in from the three-eyed creature's third eye, I came here. This must be the creature's body, and it's very likely that this is the creature's sea of consciousness. The surrounding scene should be that of a chaotic sea of consciousness. The creature that appeared, the lightning, and the thunder might have been formed by the creature's instinct. That makes sense. This creature was able to create a Taoist field in the primal chaos, so there's no doubt that it's powerful. Even if this body isn't even an incarnation, it must have been formed by some kind of strange rule. It must contain some special characteristics of this creature. This thought gradually sank into Luo Fan's mind. If I want to comprehend the mysteries of this body, I definitely can't stay here. Even if I can't open the sea of consciousness, I have to leave this sea of consciousness. In the interval where the life force scattered, Luo Fan finally understood his goal. Although he had already determined his target, it did not mean that Luo Fan could immediately respond to it. This was because even though his thinking speed was faster than before compared to his normal thinking speed, it was still unimaginably slow. It was not enough for him to use some divine arts to deal with this situation. Fortunately, every time the incarnation of his thought collapsed, his intelligence made his thinking speed slightly faster. If this continued, there would be a moment when his thinking speed would increase to its original speed. At that time, he would be able to use his divine arts to stop the strange body from shattering. With this decision, Luo Fan was no longer worried. He only immersed himself in the endless cycle that seemed to never be tempered and would never disappear. During this cycle, he did his best to restrain his thought incarnation and worked hard to speed up the recovery of his thinking. After an unknown period of time, the number of cycles finally reached 129,600. When the 29,600 cycle began, Luo Fan suddenly discovered that although his thinking speed was still not as fast as normal, it had reached the point where he could use his divine arts. With this discovery, he did not hesitate. When the vortex appeared above his head, a faint fluorescent light was emitted from his thought incarnation. This fluorescent light was mysterious and extremely pure. The light seemed to be corporeal, but it was not simple corporeal. It was the kind of corporeal that could not be destroyed even if the world was destroyed. After this fluorescent light appeared, it continuously condensed above Luo Fan's head. In the blink of an eye, it turned into an auspicious cloud. This auspicious cloud was only 3 feet wide. Although it was not big, it was enough to protect Luo Fan's body. When the auspicious cloud appeared, the vortex finally expanded to 10,000 miles in diameter. The boundless and murky surroundings were once again torn apart by an endless bolt of lightning. The rumble had already sounded before the lightning appeared, and the vortex disappeared without a trace. It was replaced by the strange creature that had already appeared 129,600 times. This creature descended from the sky and pounced towards Luo Fan. It wanted to do what it had done 129,600 times before and directly tear this incarnation to shreds. However, just as it was about to pounce down with an earth-shattering momentum, stirring up the chaotic state of the surroundings and tearing Luo Fan to shreds, the auspicious cloud above Luo Fan's head slightly trembled and went to meet this strange creature. Although this strange creature was formed by the instinct of this body, it was born to use the magic power of this body. In the outside world, it only needed to grab, and it could destroy an entire minor kiliacosm or even a medium kiliacosm. Even the primordial world, it could probably turn the void within a radius of 10,000 miles into powder. However, it was only an instinct after all, and its flexibility was extremely poor. After using this kind of attack 129,600 times, no matter how strong it was, as long as Luo Fan had time to react, it would not be much of a threat. The moment the auspicious cloud collided with the strange creature's attack, a strange vibration suddenly appeared. This vibration was extremely mysterious. Although it was just a vibration, it seemed to contain all the mysteries of the great Tao that Luo Fan had comprehended since he came to the primordial world. Its offensive and defensive power was extremely terrifying. In addition, what was even more mysterious was that the vibration of the auspicious cloud was directly aimed at this strange creature's attack. The moment the tremors came into contact with the strange life form that seemed to be able to destroy heaven and earth, causing the surrounding chaos to produce endless changes, as if it had pounced into infinite time and space. Although it seemed to have come into contact with the magic cloud, and its body kept moving forward, no matter what, it could not come into contact with the magic cloud. It was as if he had entered another time and space. It was as if the distance between him and the magic cloud, which seemed to be only a few inches, had been stretched to an infinite distance. No matter how the strange creature moved forward, how it attacked, how it disturbed the surrounding time and space, and how it destroyed the world, it could not get close to the seemingly ordinary auspicious cloud that was only 10 feet wide. Luo Fan raised his head to look at the strange creature, and a smile gradually appeared on his face. As time passed, he felt his thinking speed up bit by bit. In a short while, he had already reached the extent that he could only reach after shattering his incarnation 129,600 times. As expected, it's just instinct, Luo Fan thought. The auspicious cloud, condensed from fluorescent light above his head, did not contain much power. Although it contained endless mysteries, what it displayed was only a void that was in between reality and illusion. It was similar to the illusion Tao that he had comprehended from the boundless sea of blood, but it was a level deeper and even more untraceable. Although this divine ability was extremely mysterious, even Luo Fan himself probably had the ability to break it. If the vast will's main body came, even if it was just a body, an incarnation, or a trace of will, it would definitely be able to easily break it. However, at this moment, the strange creature above only knew how to pounce forward. Although it was extremely powerful, it did not know how to be flexible and could not break the void that was in between reality and illusion. When Luo Fan's thinking speed reached a tenth of his normal thinking speed, the void shook, and a rumble that sounded like the vibration of the great Tao suddenly rang out. With this rumble, a bolt of lightning appeared out of nowhere. It did not start or end, and it cut through the endless gray existence in the surroundings. However, what Luo Fan saw through this grayish existence this time was not the scene that he could see before, but a dark nothingness. This void was incomparably mysterious and strange. Any living creature could sense that there was nothing in the black void, but they felt that with just a thought, the void could naturally create everything in the world, create endless space-time, and create everything that any living creature wanted. This is emptiness. Luo Fan looked at the emptiness, and a bolt of lightning flashed through his mind. At this moment, he felt as if time had slowed down by 1 billion times. His thinking speed was increasing at an unimaginable speed. In the blink of an eye, it had reached the speed of his normal thinking speed. In fact, even after reaching this level of normal thought, it still didn't stop. Instead, it continued to increase and accelerate. There was no limit, and it continued to accelerate endlessly. The acceleration of his thinking speed made the feeling of time slowing down even more obvious. The extremely short time that the bolt of lightning cut through the gray chaos was less than a 10,000th of a second, but in his eyes, it seemed to have been stretched to tens of millions of years. Such a long period of time allowed Luo Fan to easily comprehend the nothingness in front of him. Because of this, he realized that the strange nothingness in front of him was the realm that he had immersed himself in for an unknown amount of time, for 129,600 times. Void. This place was originally the sea of consciousness of the strange creature. The reason why such a chaotic scene had appeared was because this body only had a fleshly body. There was no God's soul, will, or spiritual sense that had descended upon it. Therefore, this sea of consciousness had not been opened, and it appeared to be in chaos. The lightning had no beginning and no end, but it was the occasional spiritual light that this body emitted. If it was a mortal or even innate god of the primordial world, if he lost his soul, will, and spiritual sense, his body would definitely become a living dead with all kinds of physiological activities. Although there were all kinds of physiological activities, he would never have a sea of consciousness, no power, and no instinct. However, this body was naturally formed under the effect of some mysterious laws. It was created for the sake of welcoming the life form that could establish a dojo in the primal chaos. So it naturally possessed characteristics that other life forms could not compare to. This body could occasionally flash with rays of spiritual light, which could stimulate the various instincts of this body, allowing this body to gradually transform from an inanimate object into a living being. If this body continued to stay like this, and no one paid attention to it, the spiritual light would gradually gather and finally open the entire sea of consciousness. A new spiritual consciousness would be born, and this body would become a living creature again. This living creature that was formed because of the new spiritual consciousness was not as powerful as the body with the vast will, but because of the instincts of this body, it was at least 1,000,000 times stronger than Luo Fan, who had attained the primordial unity Tao fruit. Even if it could not be compared to a cultivator who had attained the primordial unity Tao fruit, it could at least be compared to a cultivator who had attained the zenith heaven Tao fruit. At this moment, the nothingness that was cut by the spiritual light was the sign of the condensing of a new spiritual consciousness. Although this sign was tens of thousands of years away from the condensing of a new spiritual consciousness, it was a sign after all, and it contained infinite mystery. At this moment, Luo Fan was comprehending the realm of nothingness, and he only felt that his mind had obtained some kind of strange sublimation. The feeling of being immersed in the realm of emptiness for the 129,600 times flashed in his mind in an extremely mysterious way. Like a bystander, Luo Fan watched his other self gradually immersed in the realm of emptiness. As he was immersed in it, his mental incarnation seemed to be summoned by some mysterious rules and slowly floated forward. Of course, this kind of slowness was only seen by Luo Fan, who was watching curiously from the side. In reality, the speed at which Luo Fan floated forward was unimaginably fast. Although Luo Fan felt like tens of thousands of years had passed, in reality, less than a 10,000th of a second had passed. Luo Fan's figure directly entered the nothingness that had been opened up by the endless lightning. The moment his mental incarnation entered, an extremely mournful roar came from the mouth of the three-eyed creature that was pouncing towards the auspicious clouds. At the same time, the three-eyed creature with a human body, snake tail trembled violently. Then, it suddenly collapsed, and like a figure condensed from smoke, it suddenly dispersed by the wind. In just an instant, it disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Countless rumbling sounds rang out from the trembling of the great Daos, and endless lightning appeared out of nowhere. Under the endless lightning bolts, the chaos, which filled all space and time, was split apart bit by bit. The number of lightning kept increasing. At first, it was just a few bolts, and one could still see the width of the lightning bolts and the gaps between them. However, after an unknown number of seconds, the number of lightning bolts became so many that it was impossible to distinguish them with the naked eye. All the lightning bolts seemed to connect into one, like a light curtain that covered the sky and the earth, directly tearing apart all the chaos that the naked eye could see. A strange world, an incomparably mysterious world, was gradually born at the place where the primordial chaos was torn apart. At first, it was just an undetectable that was like a speck of dust. However, as time passed and the number of lightning bolts increased, the dot kept expanding and growing, gradually revealing its true appearance, a world that was getting bigger and bigger, an extremely complete world. This world that was getting bigger and bigger looked a little like the world in Luo Fan's Sea of Consciousness. It was also a continent with countless terrains. Above the continent was a void, and above it was a gray sky. In the center of this world that was getting bigger and bigger, there was an extremely strange ellipsoidal silk cocoon. This silk cocoon was gold and silver in color. It shook and trembled, stretching and contracting like a beating heart. This silk cocoon was tens of thousands of feet tall, and its structure was extremely mysterious. It seemed to be made up of countless threads that were tens of thousands of times smaller than spider silk. It looked like an egg-shaped silk cocoon, but there were countless complicated and mysterious runes, talismans, and patterns on it. The entire silk cocoon was in fact an all-encompassing array that contained endless mysteries. This world continued to expand and grow. After the endless lightning reached its peak, it began to slowly decrease, and its strength also gradually weakened. As the lightning decreased, the speed at which the world was expanding also decreased. Although it was still growing, it was clearly reaching the end. After an unknown period of time, the lightning finally disappeared completely. As for the world, it had stopped growing and expanding. At this time, the world had already stabilized to a width of 49,000 miles and a height of 49,000 miles. It seemed to be boundless. Outside this world, there was endless primal chaos that covered it, completely covering it. Although this world was extremely vast, compared to the sea of consciousness that had yet to be opened, it was like comparing a grain of sand to a boundless ocean. The difference was like the difference between heaven and earth, and the two couldn't be compared at all. When the world stopped growing, the speed at which the egg-shaped silk cocoon expanded and trembled gradually increased. At the same time, strange thumping sounds constantly reverberated throughout the world. This sound reflected the frequency of the egg-shaped silk cocoon's beating, as if the entire world was beating along with the cocoon. After an unknown period of time, the speed at which the egg-shaped silk cocoon expanded and trembled had already increased to the point that it was connected together. It was like a huge sound, and it was impossible to hear the interval between them. At this moment, an indescribable brilliance suddenly shot out from the egg-shaped silk cocoon. Under this indescribable brilliance, countless cracks appeared on the egg-shaped silk cocoon. These cracks were thin and dense, and they were constantly expanding. In a short while, the entire silk cocoon had turned into countless fragments. These countless fragments were blasted by the brilliance, and they scattered in all directions, sweeping through the world. Under this brilliance, a curled-up figure slowly stretched out. It had a human body, a snake tail, and 3 eyes. It was the outline of that strange creature. Chapter 392. Change in cultivation. This figure was formed by Luo Fan's thought incarnation. After being deterred by the invisible force and drifting into the chaos that was split open by the endless lightning, Luo Fan felt that the state of emptiness drowned him again. After entering it, the detachment that made him feel as if he had entered the state of emptiness had completely disappeared. However, This state of emptiness was slightly and mysteriously different from the previous 129,600 times. In this state, his thought incarnation seemed to be constantly being cleansed, constantly undergoing incomparably subtle but incomparably mysterious changes. After being immersed in the state of emptiness for an unknown period of time, a mysterious force suddenly acted on him, allowing him to instantly leave the state of emptiness. After leaving the state of emptiness, he found that his thought incarnation had undergone earth-shaking changes. The thought incarnation was still the thought incarnation, still condensed from a small part of Luo Fan's thought, but it was already completely different from the previous thought incarnation. This thought incarnation was already like a substance, completely a complete, incomparably real existence, even more complete than the spirit, thousands of times more real. Although he could feel that this body was still condensed from thoughts, it had the feeling of flesh and blood, and the environment around his body had also undergone earth-shaking changes. It was no longer the gray and chaotic appearance from before, but a whole new world had been opened up. This is the world of the sea of consciousness. After sensing this world slightly, Luo Fan instantly grasped everything in this world, such a thought flashing through his mind. In the blink of an eye, he had already understood his current state. Since this was the world of the sea of consciousness, his current state was naturally the master of the world of the sea of consciousness, equivalent to the existence of that strange body's spirit or spiritual sense. With a thought, endless strange yuan qi condensed in the world of the sea of consciousness, and his body was like a black hole that swallowed the endless yuan qi. As it was swallowed, his body rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded to a height of tens of thousands of miles. Even in this world that was 49,000 miles high, it seemed rather tall and shocking. Shaking his body slightly, he could feel that his power was incomparably great and that he was in perfect harmony with the world around him. In fact, he felt that with just a single thought, he could change the laws of the entire world, turning this world that was originally round and square into a universe. However, he naturally wouldn't be so bored. At this moment, Luo Fan was more concerned about the mysteries of this body. He withdrew his consciousness and carefully sensed every inch of this body from the outside to the inside, hoping to find out the characteristics and nature of this body. Unfortunately, although this body was formed from his will, the mysteries contained in this body were beyond the scope of his understanding. Although he could observe this body from the outside to the inside, even down to the most minute level of powder, he realized that his control over this body was like an ordinary person's control over their own body. He knew how it was, but he didn't know why. He couldn't even grasp or touch the innate power contained in this body. He only knew that this body possessed a characteristic that was close to indestructible, as if no power could destroy it or destroy it. It seems that the benefits I've obtained this time are beyond my imagination. Luo Fan didn't feel offended. Instead, a faint smile appeared on his face. Even he, who had attained the grand unity Tao fruit, couldn't grasp this body at all, so its profundities could be imagined. With a slight thought, Luo Fan spread out his consciousness and carefully sensed this entire strange world. After an unknown period of time, the three eyes on his face suddenly erupted with rays of divine light. Then, with a shake of his consciousness, it had already left this body that seemed like it was made of flesh and blood, and it quickly swam around this strange world. In the end, it entered a mysterious and unfathomable position and disappeared from this strange world. The moment this consciousness disappeared from this strange world, Luo Fan felt that he had changed his body. This body was slightly similar to the body in that strange world, but it was even more mysterious and incomprehensible. But it was also more powerful. Incomparably vast and incomparably terrifying power was used in Luo Fan's consciousness, making him feel that he could destroy the world with a raise of his hand and a kick. It seemed that he could destroy the universe, the heaven, the earth, and the infinite space-time with a wave of his hand. However, at the same time, he also felt that his body seemed to be loaded with infinite space-time. It was extremely terrifying, and an unimaginable pressure completely acted on his entire body. This pressure was so strong that he felt that if he moved even a little, all his energy would be exhausted. It would completely exhaust all the power contained in the consciousness incarnation. This is the body of an existence that can establish a Taoist field in the chaos. A body that is comparable to a cultivator who has attained the chaos Tao fruit. Luo Fan was not surprised by this at all. This was the only joyful thought in his mind. The contradictory and unfamiliar feeling this body gave him was because his consciousness, his cultivation realm, and the Tao fruit he had attained were too far from the requirements of this body. This represented that the profundities contained within this body far exceeded the limits that could be described by attaining the primordial Tao fruit. Even though this caused him to be unable to rely on the might of this body to fight his enemies, it allowed him to see a higher level of attainment in the Tao. This allowed him to know which direction he should work towards in order to attain the Daluo Tao fruit, or even the primordial unity Tao fruit. Although this did not seem to bring any benefits at this time, it would be of great benefit to Luo Fan's future cultivation. With a thought, Luo Fan activated all the energy in his body and slowly opened the 3 eyes on the face of this body. This body's 3 eyes were not divided into primary and secondary ones. All 3 eyes were the same, and none of them contained any profound power that the other eyes did not. But at the same time, it could be said that each of the 3 eyes contained boundless power. During the process of opening his eyes, Luo Fan felt his energy rapidly deplete. He could even faintly feel that the world that had been established in the chaos of his sea of consciousness was changing at a visible rate. Although it had not shrunk in size, all the mountains, rivers, flowers, trees, and strange energies in the world were rapidly being consumed. Even the huge body that was tens of thousands of kilometers tall was shrinking during this process. At the instant the 3 eyes opened, the entire world became dusky, and the strange body in the world had shrunk to less than 3 meters tall. The body that was less than 10 feet tall seemed extremely dispirited, as if all of its power had been sucked away. The murky, chaotic scene in the world seemed no different from the outside world, but in fact it was very different from the murky chaos in the outside world. This difference was that the dusky chaos in this world was mixed with Luo Fan's thoughts. As long as there was enough time and energy, Luo Fan would be able to establish a new world. However, unlike the chaos in the outside world, Luo Fan could not be shaken at all. At this moment, Luo Fan finally saw the situation in the outside world through the 3 eyes on his face. This was an incomparably mysterious, yet incomparably strange world. This body was the reflection of a life that could establish a dojo in the primal chaos. These 3 eyes naturally contained a trace of that life's mysterious power. At this moment, the world that appeared in Luo Fan's eyes was completely different from the world that he had imagined. At the moment, this body should be in Luo Fan's spiritual world. In Luo Fan's mind, what he saw should be that mysterious spiritual world. What he saw should be countless living beings, mountains and rivers, flowers and trees, and even Pan Gu's bone, which had been releasing a desolate and unyielding sense of power. However, what he saw overturned his mind. In his eyes, there were endless lines. In the eyes of ordinary people, these endless lines were like a mess. Even a single glance at them could shatter their minds and turn them into ashes. However, with the help of the 3 eyes, Luo Fan instantly grasped the movements of every single one of these endless lines. Through the structure of these lines, he could understand the secrets of these lines. These were the rules, the mysteries of the great Tao, the truths of the world. These 3 eyes could actually directly see through all superficial phenomena and see the deepest essence. These endless lines could be divided into several layers. The outermost layer represented an incomparably vast sea of consciousness. Under the spiritual world, It represented a body that had attained the fruit of Tao of Tai and had been refined for tens of millions of years. Under the lines that represented the body, there was a palace. Under the palace, there was a medium-class world. Under the palace, there was a small-class world and the embryonic 999 small-class worlds. Under the palace, there was the original body of the Wuji Palace. Under the palace, there was an incomparably vast and magnificent world, which contained infinite time and space, an infinite heaven and earth primitive world. The lines that represented this great wilderness world were extremely complex. Compared to the dimensional realm, the minor dimension, the limitless void palace, Luo Fan's body, and even his sea of consciousness, all of these added together were trillions and trillions of times more complex. Even comparing the sand of Ganges River to the Ganges River couldn't be described. Even the distance between the sky and the earth couldn't be described. With such complicated lines, not to mention seeing through them, it was already extremely difficult to not collapse and not faint. Therefore, although he knew that there was an even deeper, more complicated, and vaster existence below this layer, Luo Fan couldn't see it no matter what. This is just a body created by the heaven and earth to welcome the vast will. How terrifying must the body of the vast will be? At this time, Luo Fan's mind was filled with endless shock. Everything that these three eyes saw directly penetrated through all the barriers of time and space, and all the mysteries of time and space were included in their observation range. In comparison, although his true pupils of sun and moon were also quite mysterious, there was a world of difference between them. Crack! The sound of endless time and space being destroyed suddenly echoed in Luo Fan's mind. In an instant, the incomparably mysterious scene that he saw with the help of his third eye collapsed with a loud bang. The eyelids of the third eye were like hundreds of millions of mountains stacked on top of each other, falling from the sky. They fell in a way that could not be stopped or delayed, completely blocking his vision. At the same time, he felt his perception of the body quickly fade. All of his thoughts retracted back into the sea of consciousness of the body through some mysterious and unfathomable method in the blink of an eye. They retracted into the body that was curled up in the boundless chaos. At this moment, the body had already shrunk to the size of a speck of dust. It was extremely fleeting and blurry, as if it would completely collapse and disappear with a single ripple. Fortunately, at this moment, the consciousness returned. After the consciousness returned, although the body was still blurry, the fleeting feeling had disappeared. Even his originally rapid heartbeat had gradually calmed down. Such a tremendous amount of energy was only enough for these three eyes to look at me for a moment, not even for 1/10,000th of a second. The strange body slowly opened its three eyes, which were filled with helplessness and joy, and murmured. After murmuring, the surroundings of the body slightly changed. A small world, which was only big enough to cover this speck of dust, appeared out of thin air. After that, the body curled up again, and its heartbeat and breathing became extremely slow. At this moment, in Luo Fan's sea of consciousness, the gold and silver light deep in the eye sockets of Pan Gu's bones slightly quaked, then shone again. At the same time, everything that the consciousness had experienced, including all of its perceptions and experiences, instantly flashed across Jihao's mind, directly absorbed into his memory, and could no longer be separated. The moment these experiences, perceptions, and experiences were absorbed into his memory, Luo Fan's consciousness suddenly left the sea of consciousness and returned to his body. At the same time, the Tai fruit of Tao in his Dantian quickly expanded and contracted for a few times. In an instant, the mana units in the Tai fruit of Tao doubled. From the original 96 million mana units, it increased to 92 million. Moreover, these magic power units that had grown were all plentiful and melded perfectly. The power inside was incomparably abundant, and there was no feeling of emptiness at all. However, as soon as it appeared, it reached its peak. This was what Luo Fan saw with the help of the strange creature's three eyes. After the scene of the boundless essence of space and time was absorbed into his own perception, he comprehended a trace of the essence of the primordial world. His cultivation realm greatly improved, his mana instantly doubled, and the Tai fruit of Tao became even more complete. The Tai Tao fruit was an extremely mysterious and miraculous existence. It contained boundless and inconceivable might, and it was even more self-sufficient. Because of this, the mana units produced by the Tai fruit of Tao, as long as they were born, they would naturally be filled with pure energy. They did not need to be like the earthly, immortal fruit of Tao, which needed to absorb the chaotic energy of the outside world to replenish themselves. The moment his mana doubled, Luo Fan felt his mind become clearer, and he could sense the supreme grand Tao more clearly. Even in the mysterious palace of Wuji Palace, he could feel that his ability to command the law had made great progress. The range of the world he could command had become wider, from the original 10,000 miles to 20,000 miles. Moreover, the limit of the world he could command was stronger, and the things he could do with the world were even more. With a thought, he opened his eyes. There was a golden and silver light that seemed to split open the world coming out from the depths of his pupils. Under this golden and silver light, all the mysteries of the world, nature, and all things in the universe appeared before him without any reservation. It was the true pupils of sun and moon. As his cultivation level increased, it also made great progress. After all, the reason why his cultivation level could improve so much was because the three eyes of the strange body had seen the endless lines of the laws of space. Therefore, he had a deeper understanding of the limits of his eyesight. Even though the true pupils of sun and moon were fundamentally different from the three eyes of the living being, they were different paths to the same goal. When it reached a very high level, it could be verified through what he had seen with his third eye. Luo Fan's understanding of the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupils had unknowingly risen to a higher level, finally allowing the sun and moon true pupils to improve. Although it didn't allow him to break through the second realm of the Pangu chaotic heavenly pupils, it still allowed him to advance a lot in the second realm. The sun and moon true pupil had made such progress. His eyes instantly illuminated this strange palace. Through this strange palace, he could see all the dimensional worlds, minor kiliocosms, and embryonic forms of minor kiliocosms within the everlasting Void Palace. He could even see the scenes of the outside world through the everlasting Void Palace. One eye for heaven and earth, one eye for all things, one eye for all living beings, one eye for Buddha. Luo Fan suddenly chanted these words. As he said these words, the golden and silver light in his eyes suddenly solidified and rushed into the void. With a shake and a contraction, endless chaotic energy appeared out of nowhere. It covered the sky and the earth, but it also filled the entire strange palace with incomparable gentleness. It also filled the depths of the palace, the medium-class worlds, the minor kiliocosms, and the embryonic forms of the minor kiliocosms. The moment the chaotic energy appeared, the sea of lightning around the strange palace immediately calmed down. The originally violent and chaotic state became incomparably calm. Chapter 393. Chapter 433. Death 170 million years. This endless chaotic energy did not appear out of thin air, nor did it pour in from the untainted world. Instead, Luo Fan used the power of the true eyes of sun and moon to distort time and space, to summon the chaotic energy from a mysterious place between the past and the future. The appearance of this chaotic energy contained an extremely mysterious principle. It was not as simple as appearing out of thin air or pouring in from the untainted world. The limitless Void Palace was like a dry desert as it absorbed the primal chi crazily. The minor kiliocosm, the medium kiliocosm, the embryonic form of the minor kiliocosm, the main body of the Wuji Palace, this strange palace, everything was crazily seeking the chaotic energy. As the chaotic yuan chi poured in, The various worlds and mysterious halls that seemed to have dried up began to glow with vitality once again. The various energies in the medium kiliacosm rapidly increased. In the sky, because of the increase of the various energies, endless rays of light condensed. In this light, there were all kinds of indescribable fragrances that filled the world. This kind of fragrance was very mysterious. When ordinary creatures smelled it, they would feel comfortable all over, and all kinds of diseases would be cured. If creatures that knew how to cultivate smelled this fragrance, they would also feel their energy become active, their minds become clearer, and they would become calmer. The medium kiliacosm had already undergone such a huge change. The embryonic form of the minor kiliacosm had also undergone even greater changes. Naturally, there were even more of those abnormal signs. In the complete minor kiliacosm, the entire world was shrouded in the colorful rays of light. Almost every inch of the void in the sky and on the ground was rapidly shrinking like a living creature, absorbing the chaotic energy that poured in from the outside world. As it absorbed, the strength of the minor kiliacosm was slowly recovering. The various negative effects caused by Luo Fan using its power to defend against the attack of the vast will gradually disappeared, and the minor kiliacosm gradually returned to its original state. Moreover, this wasn't all. After the minor kiliacosm returned to its original state before Luo Fan used his power to defend against it, the chaotic energy that poured in from the void continued to increase. This chaotic energy wasn't like what Luo Fan used in the past, where he used the power of a world to extract chaotic energy from the outside world. Instead, through some mysterious changes, it directly integrated into the origin of the minor kiliacosm and increased the origin of the minor kiliacosm. As the chaotic energy increased in this way, the origin of the minor kiliacosm gradually grew. The minor kiliacosm was filled with Xiantian Yuan Qi, chaotic Yuan Qi, astral evil Qi, and other kinds of energy. They were constantly becoming denser. Even the space of the minor kiliacosm was becoming more stable and more difficult to break. Apart from the minor kiliacosm was also being absorbed into the chaotic energy and integrated into the kiliacosm in a mysterious way. The chaotic energy was being integrated into the origin of the minor kiliacosm. With the integration of the chaotic energy, the minor kiliacosm gradually broke away from its original dim state. The light of the minor kiliacosm became brighter, and the minor kiliacosm became more stable. By the time the minor kiliacosm was fully restored, the minor kiliacosm had also completely restored its stability. After that, it didn't stop changing and continue to grow. After an unknown period of time, the chaotic energy stopped pouring in. When it completely disappeared, the minor kiliacosm was already more than 10 times larger than it was at the beginning. Although it still hadn't reached the point of splitting the sky and forming a minor kiliacosm, it was still a big step forward. At this time, the minor kiliacosm and the minor kiliacosm had also grown a lot. The strength of the space had at least doubled, and the density of the Yuan Qi in the minor kiliacosm had at least doubled. Even if it still hadn't reached the level of qualitative change, it was still an extremely astonishing improvement. As the light in Luo Fan's eyes flowed, the chaotic energy that had appeared out of thin air completely disappeared. Gradually, his eyes returned to normal as well. After that, he calmed his mind and scanned his own spiritual sea. Finally, he found that his spiritual sea had already doubled in size. In this spiritual sea, Pangu's bone didn't grow any taller, but it was glowing and sturdier than before. At this moment, the sea of consciousness world was as vast as the sky and as high as the earth. Looking over, it gave off a feeling of limitlessness. In the sea of consciousness, near the end of the sea of consciousness, there was a gigantic, strange body that was curled up into a ball. It was fixed in place by a ball of natural, indestructible, spiritual light floating in the air. This body had a human body and a snake tail with 3 eyes on its face. It was completely naked, with its long snake tail coiled around its body, wrapping it up. This body was especially tall and strong. If it stretched out, it wouldn't be any weaker than Pangu's bone. It was strong enough to support the sky and the earth. This was the body that was generated by some kind of magical natural law to welcome the great will of Pangu, but was locked by Luo Fan with the power of his spiritual sea. However, compared to when it was first formed, this body had undergone an extremely subtle change. At the moment, this body didn't look like an inanimate object anymore. Instead, an inexhaustible life force had been growing inside it. Curling up in that place, it looked like an egg, which had been pregnant with some kind of magical creature. Other than this, even more magical changes had happened to this body. The appearance of this body was exactly the same as that of Luo Fan. Except for the third eye on its forehead, this face looked exactly the same as that of Luo Fan. In this spiritual sea, Luo Fan's spirit naturally attached to the Pangu's bone. Seeing this through the eyes of the Pangu's bone, he finally relaxed completely. A faint joy filled his mind. Then, with a thought, the connate, inextinguishable spirit light that was holding the body that was curled up like a mother's womb trembled, and the power that was hanging down from it disappeared. At the same time, the connate, inextinguishable spirit light also stretched and compressed, returning to its original form as a spirit light. Next, it transformed into a beam of light and flashed across the sky. Within a blink of an eye, it had crossed a long distance and directly bumped into Pangu's bone. Turning and rushing, it rushed into the world inside Pangu's bone. As I thought, it's completely digested. At this moment, Luo Fan didn't pay any attention to this inextinguishable natural spirit light. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the curled-up body. This thought flashed across his mind. That inextinguishable natural spirit light was released to lock this body. Now, he took it back, but this body didn't show any reaction. The mysterious natural laws in this body didn't move at all. Earlier, when the great will of Jihao disappeared, it didn't seem to want to stop until this body was taken back. Obviously, this body had accepted the fact that this body existed as a part of Luo Fan. Although I still can't control this body completely, and I can't even control this body to open the three eyes to check the time and space for a long time. Being able to check the time and space with the three eyes for a short period of time is already a great benefit. As long as I have enough time, my will incarnation in it will grow to the point where I can truly control this body. At that time, it will be equivalent to having an avatar that has at least attained the Tao fruit of the great firmament. Luo Fan thought, feeling that his future was bright. With such a magical clone, Luo Fan was destined to attain the fruit of Tao of the great heaven, and it was only a matter of time. It could be said that his future was bright. Unfortunately, it would take an extremely long time to seek the fruit of Tao of the great heaven with the help of the profound profundities contained in this body. As for exactly how long it would take, it was something that Luo Fan didn't know at this moment. Even if he possessed all sorts of earth-shattering techniques that could tell the past and the future, and even had a close connection with the supreme grand Tao of the primordial world to observe the secrets of the heavens with the help of the supreme grand Tao, it was impossible for him to truly know how long it would take. After all, he had only attained the fruit of Tao of the primordial unity. The fruit of the Tao was an extremely mysterious and profound existence. The vast will was so powerful that most people would exclaim in admiration at the cultivation method of the fruit of the Tao, and they would even think that this cultivation method could eventually form its own grand Tao and transcend the heavens and the earth. Every level of such an incredible and profound existence was a world. If one didn't attain that level, then one would be utterly unable to understand the profundities of that level. Just like how when Luo Fan attained the earthly immortal Tao fruit, he was utterly unable to understand the might and profundities of the primordial unity Tao fruit. Before he attained the fruit of the great heaven, no matter how strong Luo Fan was or how profound he tempered the fruit of the primordial unity Tao fruit, he would absolutely be unable to understand the profundities of the fruit of the great heaven. How could he possibly deduce the time it would take to attain a goal that was completely incomprehensible? Luo Fan organized his thoughts and wanted to deduce exactly how much time he would need to spend to truly grasp this body and truly transform it into his own clone. Yet he noticed that he didn't know where to start at all. The countless methods of deduction within the Tao Fruit's Grand Tao scripture were like looking at the markings on one's palm when deducing other things. Yet when deducing this matter, it was like looking at a flower through a mist, and he could only see a dense mist and was utterly unable to see exactly what was within it. After a long time, Luo Fan was completely convinced that this matter was not something he could deduce, and he could only sigh helplessly. The bone of Pangu raised its head and stared hard at the body. With a single thought, it had already returned to its own body. He stood up, and with a slight thought, he already knew how much time had passed. 1,320 years. So much time has actually passed. Luo Fan sighed. Since he entered this strange palace until now, more than 1,300 years had passed in the untainted world. In total, the time he'd spent in this palace was as long as 175,857,000 years. During this period of time, it was as long as 1,300 yuanwei. Even the phrase, the vicissitudes of life, was probably insufficient to describe such a long period of time. Calculating the time, it's almost time for Gu Ling and Ancestor Sky Dragon to arrive. As these thoughts flashed across Luo Fan's mind, he stood up and took a step forward, disappearing from this strange palace. When he reappeared, he was in the untainted world, in the depths of the Seeker Cave on Buzhou Mountain. Arriving here, he raised his hand and waved. The Wuji Palace floating above his head rotated, transformed into a dark yellow light, and surged into his spiritual world. 1,000 years was merely a blink of an eye in the untainted world. Surely, not much had changed in the Seeker Cave. More than 100 million years had passed in the Wuji Palace. Surely, Luo Fan's disciples couldn't stay in the Wuji Palace forever. This period of time was way too long, even for Hongjun. If he stayed in the Wuji Palace all the time, he wouldn't be able to make any progress. On the contrary, he would gradually degenerate because of the long period of time. The Wuji Palace was a primordial unity treasure refined by Luo Fan. The treasure spirit, Wuji Boy, was extremely intelligent. Although he wasn't a real living being, he had some autonomy. After millions of years, he finally sent them out of the Wuji Palace under the request of Hongjun and the others. At this moment, Luo Fu, Guangpu, and Luo Chunyang had already returned to the bright world above the sun. However, Tian Yi and the other two left behind words of apology in the Seeker Cave. They left Buzhou Mountain and went to the untainted world to look for the innate gods who had lost their inheritance. At this moment, only Hongjun was left in the Seeker Cave. With a thought, Luo Fan had already gone through all the things that had happened in the past 1,320 years in his mind. Disciple Hongjun greets Master. May Master live forever. At this moment, a rather excited voice came into Luo Fan's ears. With a thought, Luo Fan knew that Hongjun had sensed his aura and came to pay his respects. He turned his head and saw Hongjun bowing not far away. Get up and come over to talk. Luo Fan smiled and raised his hand. A wave of potential helped Hongjun up and said. Hongjun stood up and walked forward happily. Luo Fan walked to the meditation cushion that he usually preached and cultivated. He sat down and looked at Hongjun. You did well. You were able to break through the perfected immortal realm and become a golden immortal. You haven't slacked off all these years. I'm very pleased, Luo Fan said with a smile. At this moment, Hongjun, who was in front of Luo Fan, was no longer the same as the last time he saw him, who was only at the peak of the realm of true immortals and was on the same level as Immortal Tanmu. Instead, his cultivation had improved greatly, and his cultivation had broken through the bottleneck of the realm of true immortals, allowing him to achieve the realm of golden immortals. Although he had just stabilized himself at the golden immortal realm, compared to the other innate gods in the primordial world, he was already fundamentally different. Among all the innate gods in the primordial world, his cultivation level were only second to Luo Fan. He was the second person in the primordial world, compared to when he was at the peak of the perfected immortal realm. Hong Jun was more than 10,000 times stronger now. At this moment, if perfected sandalwood, who was at the peak of the perfected immortal realm, appeared in front of him, Hong Jun could even subdue him with a finger. I'm ashamed. I can only comprehend a little of the Tao that Master taught me. It took me nearly 10 million years to break through the bottleneck of the perfected immortal realm. I'm really ashamed of Master's teachings. Hong Jun was very happy to be praised by Luo Fan, but he felt more ashamed. Although my disciple needs to set his goal further, there's no need be so timid. Since you can reach the golden immortal realm, you have already transcended all the innate gods in the primordial world. Even perfected sandalwood can't compare to you. Why should you feel ashamed? If you should be happy, you should be sad. We are the spirits of cultivation, but we don't need to suppress our temperament, Luo Fan said with a smile. I'll remember, Hong Jun hurriedly said solemnly. You don't have to go too far. You just have to remember it in your heart, Luo Fan said with a smile. Seeing that the disciple that he had taught could achieve such an achievement that surpassed all the innate gods, Luo Fan's mind was filled with gratification. At the same time, there was an indescribable sense of accomplishment in his mind. In the golden immortal realm, the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit had already reached the state of perfection. The Earth Immortal's Tao fruit in Hong Jun's body was even mixed into one. It was difficult for others to see through it. However, in the eyes of Luo Fan, there was no secret in the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit. He did not miss a single detail. At this moment, the Dharma power units that formed Hong Jun's Earth Immortal's Tao fruit had increased by 10 times compared to when he had just attained the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit. It had reached the level of 129,600. Among them, each of his Dharma power units was still the three-dimensional talisman in the shape of the Creation Jade Archive. Each of the three-dimensional talisman was made up of countless complicated and mysterious lines. It was divided into 129,600 jade slips. On each jade slip, there were countless complicated and mysterious words and patterns engraved on it. They engraved the mystical abilities and techniques that Hong Jun had cultivated for tens of thousands of years, as well as the various mysteries of the great Tao that he had comprehended. Although there were only 129,600 jade slips on the Good Fortune Jade Archive, the amount of information contained in each jade slip had reached an unimaginable level. At that moment, Hong Jun had already reached the golden immortal realm. His cultivation level had reached the second level of the primordial world. The mystical abilities, techniques, and mysteries of the great Tao that he had cultivated had already reached an unimaginable level. However, even so, there were only less than 1,296 records on the 129,600 jade slips. With a glance, Luo Fan could even see that there was an extremely large amount of compressed space within. It was likely that it would take 12 jade slips to completely record all the mysteries and mysteries within. Of course, that was only Luo Fan's analysis based on his own cultivation realm. If Hong Jun wanted to truly compress the countless choices on 12 jade slips, he would have to at least reach Luo Fan's current level cultivation. He would need to spend endless time to comprehend it. The process of comprehension and compression was also the process of organizing his Tao fruit. Even though Luo Fan was Hong Jun's master, it was not good for him to replace Hong Jun. Chapter 394. In the boundless continent, there were countless living beings. Not bad. You're not ambitious. Your foundation is quite solid. Luo Fan made his final judgment. Disciple will always remember Master's teachings, Hong Jun said happily. You've already reached this realm. You should be able to see the secrets of heaven. Have you sensed anything? Luo Fan said to Hong Jun after pondering for a moment. Hearing Luo Fan's question, the joy on Hong Jun's face gradually faded. There was even a hint of worry in his eyes. After a while, he said, I was about to report to Master. Oh, there's no harm in saying it. When Luo Fan heard this, he knew that Hong Jun could indeed sense some of the secrets of heaven that he could not sense in the past. I feel that the primordial world will encounter an extremely huge calamity in the near future, but it also seems to have a chance to improve. Hong Jun said worriedly and in confusion. When Luo Fan heard Hong Jun's words, a faint smile appeared on his face. For Hong Jun to be able to comprehend this was already beyond his imagination. Although Hong Jun had already cultivated the earth immortal Dao fruit to the golden immortal realm, he had only just stepped into it. Although he had stabilized his cultivation realm, he did not have much time to polish his integration with the primordial world. His perception of the secrets of heaven was naturally far from the peak that the golden immortal realm could reach. Under such circumstances, it was normal for Hong Jun to be able to see the great calamity that the primordial world was about to encounter. After all, even perfected immortal sandalwood could sense it. However, it was quite rare for him to be able to see the hidden opportunity after the great calamity. The truth was just as Hong Jun had said. The great calamity that would occur soon would naturally be a huge challenge to the primordial world. It would even be enough to destroy the primordial world. However, at the same time, just like the heavenly tribulation of cultivators, the primordial world would also obtain great benefits after passing the great calamity. As for what the benefits were, it was not something that the current Luo Fan could know. After all, although Luo Fan's perception of the secrets of heaven was countless times stronger than Hong Jun's, he was still only a Khanate god who had obtained the primordial unity Dao fruit. He was not an omniscient existence. The secrets that he could sense were also rather vague, but it was impossible for him to completely understand the future. It's already beyond my imagination that you can feel this. I've told you about the great tribulation of the primordial world a long time ago, but similarly, the great tribulation this time is just like the heavenly tribulation you experienced when you attain the Tao. If you can't overcome it, then you'll die, your Tao will vanish, and your soul will disperse. However, once you overcome it, you'll be like a fish leaping through the dragon gate, breaking through the cocoon and becoming a butterfly, and you'll obtain unimaginable benefits. It's the same in the primordial world, said Luo Fan. Hearing Luo Fan's explanation, Hong Jun's eyes lit up, and a look of realization gradually appeared in his eyes. Just as his eyes were filled with realization, Luo Fan realized that his earth immortal Dao fruit shook slightly, and seemed to have become more round and mysterious. Although the number of Dharma power units did not increase, the amount of energy that it could contain seemed to have increased slightly. However, after listening to Luo Fan's explanation, Hong Jun understood some kind of law of heaven and earth, and his cultivation realm improved slightly. Although this was caused by Luo Fan, it was still slightly beyond his expectations. However, it was a joyous occasion after all, and Luo Fan was quite happy to see it. I understand. After a while, Hong Jun came back to his senses and bowed to Luo Fan. Luo Fan nodded and said, "Since you have already understood the meaning of the great calamity of heaven and earth, I will give you something to do." Hearing Luo Fan's words, Hong Jun hurriedly listened to the order solemnly. If it was someone else, he could naturally say that Luo Fan could give him any orders, but Hong Jun was Luo Fan's disciple. It was normal for Luo Fan to give him orders, and he did not have the right to say that. Luo Fan was naturally not surprised. He directly ordered, "There are endless continents in the endless starry sky. These continents were formed from the turbid air that was carried up when the primordial world was created. Because they have been refined by the endless star essence for hundreds of thousands of years, they have already developed many mysteries, and countless living beings have been born. Bring Fu-er, Pu-er, and Chunyang up there, and integrate the living beings on those continents to form a certain defensive force so that the living beings from the outer realm will not find any flaws." There were many continents in the endless starry sky. The formation of these continents had their own mysteries, but the root cause was that when Pangu created the world, the endless clear air that rose carried a little bit of turbid air into the sky. After entering the endless starry sky, it could not descend, so it naturally condensed into continents in the endless starry sky. These continents were extremely small compared to the primordial world, but in terms of absolute size, they were definitely not small. Moreover, because these continents were in the endless starry sky, after being formed by the turbid air, they did not turn into chaotic vitality. What filled these continents was the endless star essence that was emitted by the endless stars. These star essence had different characteristics, and many of them contained the strange characteristics of reacting with the continents and giving birth to vitality. Therefore, among the endless continents in the endless starry sky, many of these continents naturally evolved all kinds of mysterious living beings. These living beings were naturally not comparable to the innate gods born in the primordial world, and even the living beings that evolved from them could not really leave the continents and enter the primordial world. However, many of these living beings were existences with intelligence. Even if these intelligent living beings had extremely poor aptitudes and their lifespans were limited, they could not cultivate great magic before the end of their lifespans. However, if these intelligent living beings were used by the extraterrestrial demons to deal with the primordial world, it would probably cause a great impact on the primordial world. It might even become the fatal flaw of the primordial world. When the great calamity of the world was about to arrive, it was naturally impossible to ignore the living beings on these continents. There are living beings in the endless starry sky. Hearing what Luo Fan said, Hong Jun's eyes widened, and he could not help but exclaim. This exclamation was not because he doubted what Luo Fan said, but because what Luo Fan said was already beyond his imagination. The primordial world was so desolate that even the number of innate gods could be easily counted. At this time, Luo Fan said that there were endless continents above the endless starry sky, and there were even countless living beings on them. How could Hong Jun, who had always thought that the endless starry sky was even more desolate than the primordial world, accept it? However, Hong Jun was extremely convinced of Luo Fan after all. Since Luo Fan said that there were such things in the endless starry sky, he naturally would not doubt it. After the exclamation, he immediately suppressed his feeling of disbelief and said, "Yes, Master." Luo Fan was not surprised by Hong Jun's reaction. He just nodded and said, "Go ahead. Go to the bright world above the sun and bring your junior brother and junior sister with you." "Yes, I will take my leave." Hearing this, Hong Jun did not dare to delay and hurriedly bowed. Luo Fan waved his hand, and Hong Jun's body shook. He turned into a long rainbow and went straight to the sky, towards the sun in the depths of the endless starry sky. Although Hong Jun had already cultivated to the golden immortal realm with the earthly immortal Tao fruit, and had been to the endless starry sky for many days, he did not pay too much attention to the endless starry sky. Because of this, he did not know that there were so many continents in the endless starry sky and so many living beings. This time, when he stepped into the endless starry sky, he was reminded by Luo Fan to pay more attention to his surroundings. Thus, he paid more attention to it. In addition, his cultivation realm had improved greatly, and the range of his perception expanded rapidly. He finally saw the existence that he had originally ignored in the endless starry sky. The continents that were distributed in the depths of the endless starry sky were extremely far away from each other, but they had a very subtle connection with the primordial world. Because the range of his perception was limited, he could only sense tens of thousands of continents. However, it was these tens of thousands of continents that completely confirmed what Luo Fan had said before. Among these tens of thousands of continents, nearly 10% of the continents had living beings. So that's how it is. When the great god Pengu created the world, although I saw countless turbid air being carried into the sky, and even saw some of the turbid air evolving into continents, I did not expect these continents to be so different from the primordial world in the endless starry sky. If Master did not tell me, I'm afraid it would take a long time for me to notice these. Hong Jun sensed this, and such a thought appeared in his mind. After sighing, he collected his thoughts. The long rainbow that his body had turned into twisted, and he quickly flew towards the huge sun in the depths of the endless starry sky. In the endless starry sky, the strength of the void was far less than in the primordial world. under the strength of the void. With Hong Jun's cultivation realm of the golden immortal realm, he could fly thousands of times faster than in the primordial world. If he cultivated the corresponding divine power, he could even teleport in the endless starry sky at will. Flying at such a fast speed, in a short while, Hong Jun had already arrived at the enormous sun in the depths of the endless starry sky. Just as he approached the tens of thousands of miles around the sun, the void twisted. Then, an ancient stone door appeared out of thin air in the void. This door was hundreds of feet high. There was no plate, board, or couplet. It was made of a kind of blue stone that looked very ordinary, but seemed to contain some mysterious principles. Seeing the stone door appear, Hong Jun moved his mind. The long rainbow that he had turned into condensed in the void, and in the blink of an eye, his figure condensed again. At the same time, a faint smile appeared on his face. The stone door trembled slightly when Hong Jun's figure condensed, and then the two closed doors suddenly opened. The opening of the door stirred up the endless starlight around it, causing an extremely strong distortion in the void. There was a faint radiance emitting from the door, like a halo, spreading in all directions. At the same time, an aura that shouldn't have appeared in the endless starry sky suddenly spread out from behind the open door. It was a fresh and refreshing scent, the scent of grass and wood. If it was not a complete world with living beings, it would definitely be difficult to have such an aura. At this moment, a leisurely voice came from the door. "Eldest senior brother, you came from afar. Forgive me for not going out to welcome you." Then, three figures slowly walked out of the door. Second junior brother, third junior sister, and Chunyang, long time no see. Seeing the three of them, Hong Jun showed a happy smile. The people who walked out of the door were Luo Fu, Guang Pu, and Luo Chunyang. Even though so many years had passed, other than the fact that their cultivation realm seemed to have increased a little, there was not much difference between them and over 1,000 years ago. Seeing Hong Jun's arrival, Guang Pu bowed and said, "Greetings, eldest senior brother." Hong Jun smiled and raised his hand gently. There was a slight force that supported Guang Pu up, and he said, "Junior sister, you don't have to be so polite. Greetings, eldest senior uncle." Seeing that his mother had finished greeting, Luo Chunyang didn't dare to neglect and bowed to Hong Jun. "Good child. It seems that you haven't been lazy all these years." Hong Jun smiled and helped Luo Chunyang up. "With father and mother by my side, how would I dare to be lazy?" Luo Chunyang smiled and said. Luo Chunyang respected the entire Uncle Master quite a lot. When they were sent into the spirit space by Luo Fan to comprehend Taoism, Hong Jun had given Luo Chunyang a lot of help. Naturally, a deep relationship was established between the two. Seeing Hong Jun now, he was naturally quite happy. Hong Jun also had a good impression of Luo Chunyang. After all, Luo Chunyang was Luo Fan's grandson, and he was Luo Fan's eldest disciple. Luo Chunyang was also his junior, and the only junior. As an innate god who had cultivated alone in the untainted world for so many years, the feeling of having a junior was, of course, very strange to Hong Jun, but it also made him feel a lot of kinship that he had not felt before. Therefore, he would naturally not be stingy with his love for this only junior. "Eldest senior brother, we haven't seen each other for tens of thousands of years. This time we must have a good chat. Come in and see the bright world that father has opened for me." Seeing that the three of them had finished greeting, Luo Fu smiled and said to Hong Jun. Hong Jun shook his head and said, "Let's put aside the matter of visiting the bright world first. This time, I came here under master's orders. I have something to do with you." Hearing that, Luo Fu and the other two exclaimed. Then, their expressions became solemn. "Father has something for us to do. I'm afraid we can talk about chatting and visiting in the future," Luo Fu said with a frown. After that, he walked out of the door with Guang Pu and Luo Chunyang. Then, he raised his hand and waved gently. The stone door, which was connected to the bright world and showed a lively landscape, suddenly closed. Then the void rippled slightly. This stone door slowly disappeared in the endless starry sky. "Eldest senior brother, What order does Master have? At this time, Guang Pu asked anxiously. Obviously, she was very curious and anxious about what Luo Fan wanted her to do. Hong Jun looked solemn and told Luo Fu, Guang Pu, and Luo Chunyang what Luo Fan had said to him before. When Luo Fu and the other two heard this, their expressions changed slightly. That appearance was quite similar to when Hong Jun heard Luo Fan's words. He was also somewhat in disbelief, but he also came to a realization. I see. No wonder when I was comprehending the mystery at the edge of the bright world, I always felt that there seemed to be something strange in the starry sky. It was the aura of living creatures. Luo Fu said suddenly, "Oh, second junior brother, what is the mystery of the edge of the bright world that you mentioned? Why can you see the strangeness of the starry sky?" Hong Jun asked in surprise. I almost forgot. Eldest senior brother, you haven't seen the bright world. I originally thought that what Father ordered had nothing to do with the bright world. Now, it seems that it is closely related to the bright world. Eldest senior brother, you should follow me to the edge of the bright world to take a look. I think it will be useful to complete Father's order. Luo Fu patted his forehead and said with some annoyance. As he spoke, he raised his hand and waved it behind him. The void distorted, and the huge stone door that had disappeared not long ago appeared behind him out of thin air. If that's the case, it seems that we have to go to the bright world. Hong Jun nodded when he heard what Luo Fu said. Senior brother, please. Luo Fu raised his hand and pressed. The two doors of the stone door suddenly opened, revealing the scene of the bright world behind the door. The aura that could not possibly appear in the endless starry sky appeared again, and the halo around the door was revealed again. Hong Jun nodded, took a step forward, and directly crashed into the door. When his body passed through the door, he only felt that his body seemed to have crossed a layer of space-time barrier. It was as if he had passed through two completely different space-time in an instant and entered a completely new world. This feeling was very similar to the feeling when he entered the internal space of his magic treasure, Purple Cloud Palace. In just an instant, Hong Jun knew that this bright world also formed its own space-time. The space that could distort time could even be considered a minor kiliocosm. Bright world, sun and moon world, there is indeed a world of difference between me and Master. Hong Jun's mind instantly had such a feeling. Based on his understanding of Luo Fu and Guang Pu, this bright world could not have been created by the two of them. With their cultivation realm, it was definitely not a problem for them to create a simple space. However, even if the space they created could distort time a little, it would definitely not be able to distort time to this extent, let alone distort it so stably. Since it was not created by the two of them, it could only be created by Luo Fan for them. After Hong Jun broke through the bottleneck of the perfected immortal realm and became a golden immortal, he had already reforged the Purple Cloud Palace. The space inside the Purple Cloud Palace grew a lot, and even slightly accelerated the flow of time in it. However, compared to the bright world before him, the space he had opened up in the Purple Cloud Palace was like a sieve with countless holes. The stability of the space was far from comparable to the bright world. Although the flow of time was slightly faster, it was still far from the speed of time in the bright world. The stability of time was also far from comparable to the bright world. Chapter 395. Breaking the bottleneck again after Hong Jun and Luo Fu's family of three stepped through the stone door. The stone door closed with a loud bang and disappeared in the blink of an eye. As for Hong Jun and the others, they had arrived in another world. There was rich essence energy in the world. The essence of the moon, the essence of the sun, the true fire of the sun, and so on were intertwined in an extremely mysterious way. They combined with the endless essence energy of the stars. Together with the connate essence energy and the chaotic essence energy, they formed the mysterious essence energy in the bright realm. Although there were many types of essence energy, it was not mixed at all. Instead, it revealed a different kind of purity. The logic behind it was mysterious and indescribable. More than 1,000 years had passed since the Bright Realm was created in the primordial world. The flow of time in the Bright Realm was 365 times faster than that of the primordial world. The Bright Realm had a history of hundreds of thousands of years. After hundreds of thousands of years of development, the Bright Realm had undergone a tremendous change compared to when it was first created. Apart from the vitality of flowers, plants, and trees when it was first created, there were countless living beings in the entire Bright Realm. There were even many living beings flying in the void that were surrounded by essence energy. At a glance, one could tell that they were living beings with high intelligence. On the land that was like an incomparably huge valley, there were many powerful auras that soared into the sky. There were traces of the activities of many intelligent living beings that were revealed in front of Hong Jun without any concealment. Could these be the descendants of the living beings taken out from Master's Dharma treasure? Although Hong Jun was worried about Luo Fan's instructions, he could not help but pay attention to such a mysterious world. Eldest senior brother is indeed wise. Luo Fu smiled and said, "When I left the minor Kiliacosm, I brought some living beings' seeds with me. After returning, I scattered them throughout the Bright Realm. After so many years of evolution, it became this scene. Not bad. Look at the scenery of the Bright Realm. Are you experimenting with preaching the Tao in this world?" Hong Jun was already in the golden immortal realm. His perception of the heavenly secrets surpassed that of any other Khanate god, except for Luo Fan. With a flash of thought, he knew the reason and smiled. "I didn't expect that I still couldn't hide it from eldest senior brother." Guang Pu smiled sweetly and said, "Among these living beings, there are indeed many who have heard us preach the Tao. However, he only talked about some basic Taos of cultivation. He didn't reveal anything about the true grand Tao. There's no harm in leaking it out. The great Tao of the Tao fruit was not something that any living being could pursue. Although the living beings in the light world are quite mysterious, they are not Khanate gods after all. If they don't cultivate the divine reversion technique and become a Khanate body, they won't be able to cultivate it even if they know how to seek for the fruit of Tao." Hong Jun smiled. These principles were only comprehended after he broke through from the true immortal realm to the golden immortal realm. The Tao fruit grand Tao, created by Luo Fan, contained boundless profundities, and it was a profound technique that allowed one to attain the grand Tao within one's body. However, it wasn't without any requirements towards the natural talent of the cultivator. In order to cultivate the Tao fruit, the most basic requirement was to be born from the heavens and the earth, and to possess an innate body. In the primordial world, there were only two types of living beings who had the conditions to cultivate the Tao fruit. The first type was the Khanate gods. The other type was the postnatal living beings who cultivated the divine reversion technique that Luo Fan had specially created for them. Other than these two types of living beings, even if other living beings knew the cultivation technique of the Tao fruit, they would definitely not be able to attain the Tao fruit. Although the living beings in the light world were mysterious and had walked out of Luo Fan's Dharma treasure, they were only postnatal living beings. They were no exception. "I see." After hearing Hong Jun's explanation, Luo Fu's family of three revealed enlightened and relaxed expressions. "All right, I've seen the mysteries of the light world. Now, let's quickly complete what Master has instructed us to do." Hong Jun looked at the world and said to Luo Fu, "Senior brother, please follow me." Luo Fu was alert and hurriedly said. As he spoke, the primordial energy in the light world condensed and formed a 30 feet wide, auspicious cloud in front of the four of them. The auspicious cloud was as white as snow, making people feel pure at first glance. Hong Jun did not mind. He nodded and immediately stepped onto the auspicious cloud. Only then did Luo Fu and the other two follow. The auspicious cloud was 30 feet wide. Although it was not very wide, it was more than enough to accommodate a dozen people. The four of them stood on the auspicious cloud, but did not seem crowded at all. The light world was under the complete control of Luo Fu and Guang Pu. The couple had absolute control in the light world. With a thought, The auspicious cloud shot out in a direction that seemed slow but was actually fast. Soon, they arrived at the end of the light world. On the edge of the mountain peak that wrapped around the land, that looked like a valley, they happened to be at the mountain peak that Luo Fan had brought Luo Fu and the others to. Standing on the mountain peak, Hong Jun raised his eyebrows and a faint trace of light flashed in his eyes. After a while, he came to a realization and said with some emotion, "Master must have been here before." "That's right. How did eldest senior brother know?" Guangpu could not help but exclaim. Originally, the couple planned to tell Hong Jun about this after a while. However, they did not expect Hong Jun's perception to be so sharp. Before the auspicious cloud actually landed, he already knew. "When you reach my realm, you will know how powerful Master is." Hong Jun sighed. Luo Fu, Guangpu, and Luo Chunyang were confused, but they could only nod their heads, indicating that they roughly understood the matter. Hong Jun looked at the three of them and knew that they did not really understand. However, he did not expose them. Just as he said, no matter how he explained this matter now, even if he used all means to explain, he was afraid that Luo Fu and the other two would not understand. After all, the gap between cultivation realms could not be closed with words. Without reaching that realm, even if he broke his lips, the other party would not be able to understand. Hong Jun took a step and came to the mountain peak. He closed his eyes and pondered for a long time before sighing and opening his eyes. As the creator of this world, Luo Fan had the virtue of creating this incomplete minor kiliacosm. Although this minor kiliacosm was not a real living being and did not have any spirituality, it would still naturally change because of Luo Fan's aura. This was the case here. Even though hundreds of thousands of years had passed, there was still a condensed aura of Luo Fan in the place where he stayed at the last moment in the bright world. Among them, there was the deep and unfathomable aura of Luo Fan. However, it was mostly because the rules of the spirit space changed to retain the aura of the creator. At this moment, a condensed aura appeared. To Luo, Fu, and Guangpu, even if they sensed it, they would only think that it was an illusion. They could not understand this aura in depth. But for Hong Jun, this aura was extremely vast. It could reflect a trace of the mystery of Luo Fan's cultivation. Sensing this aura, Hong Jun had a deeper understanding of the power of Luo Fan. At this time, Luo Fu and Guangpu had already set foot on this mountain peak. The magic cloud that sent the four of them here shook slightly and disappeared without a trace. It returned to heaven and earth and merged into the primordial chi in the void of the bright world. After sighing about the power of his master, Hong Jun turned his gaze and looked at the abstract starry sky in front of him. This is the twisted, endless starry sky. Hong Jun looked for a while, and a look of realization appeared on his face. Luo Fu was originally going to explain to Hong Jun what was in front of him, but he did not expect to suddenly hear this from Hong Jun. He could not help but be shocked. Guangpu and Luo Chunyang's expressions were not much better than Luo Fu's. They were also extremely shocked that Hong Jun could see through the essence of the scene in front of them. This was the first time that the three of them had such a feeling of shock towards Hong Jun originally. They would only feel this kind of shock when they faced Luo Fan. It turns out that eldest senior brother is already so powerful. It turns out that eldest senior uncle is actually so powerful. The same essence, but different expressions, appeared in the minds of the three of Luo Fu and his family. At this moment, Luo Fu and Guangpu's cultivation realm had already reached the peak of the itinerant immortal realm. They were only a small step away. In fact, they only needed a change of thought at a certain moment to break through the itinerant immortal realm and become a perfected immortal realm. However, it was this small obstacle that caused the two of them to stay in the itinerant immortal realm. They could not obtain a real breakthrough, causing the distance between them and Hong Jun to unknowingly widen. However, the two of them were quite satisfied. Although they knew that their cultivation realm was not much to recommend in the primordial world, they always thought that their cultivation realm was already enough. However, he always thought that his cultivation was enough, and he always thought that it was better to let nature take its course. Although he did not slack off in his cultivation, he had lost his drive and lost a little bit of his heart to improve. At this moment, they knew that their eldest senior brother, who was of the same generation as them, was actually so powerful that he could see through the mysterious settings left behind by their master, father, at a glance. The two of them finally realized that if they did not improve, they really could not do it. In an instant, an unprecedented unwillingness emerged in their minds, and a strong desire to forge ahead appeared in their hearts once again. As this thought appeared, Luo Fu and Guang Pu's bodies trembled slightly. Almost at the same time, the earth immortal Tao in their bodies loosened a little. With just this thought, the two of them showed signs of breaking through the bottleneck of the itinerant immortal realm. With a thought, Hong Jun sensed the aura fluctuations of Luo Fu and Guang Pu, who were beside him. He instantly knew the changes in the two of them and could not help but be surprised. However, the surprise only lasted for a moment, and it immediately turned into joy. Hong Jun was unable to see through everything like Luo Fan, and he was unable to discover what Luo Fan and Guang Pu lacked the moment he saw them. But he was an itinerant immortal after all, and he was an itinerant immortal who cultivated the Tao fruit. This realm could almost be said to be an invincible existence among the cultivators of the same level. His perception of the secrets of heaven and his comprehension of the supreme Tao had reached an extremely deep level. Therefore, after being in contact with Luo Fu and Guang Pu for a period of time, he noticed that there seemed to be something wrong with Luo Fu and Guang Pu, and they seemed to be lacking something, even though he did not know what they lacked. But looking at Luo Fu and Guang Pu, he had already found what they lacked. Based on this state, they should have seen the threshold of the realm of true immortals. They only needed to cultivate in seclusion for a few decades, and they would be able to reach the realm of true immortals. Although Hong Jun was still confused about this, he was also happy for them. Cultivate in seclusion for a while. Although Master's order is quite urgent, it doesn't matter if you can reach the realm of true immortals in a few decades. If you can really reach the realm of true immortals, it will be quite beneficial to complete the task that Master has ordered. Hong Jun said to Luo Fu and Guang Pu. Luo Fu and Guang Pu were not stupid, and they naturally knew what to do. They nodded and apologized. After instructing Luo Chunyang to consult Hong Jun, they quickly crossed the void and returned to their place of cultivation to cultivate in seclusion to break through the bottleneck. Luo Chunyang was also quite happy at this moment. After so many years of cultivation, Luo Chunyang had already gone through several heavenly tribulations, and his body had initially formed the embryonic form of mana. Now, he only needed to go through the last heavenly tribulations, and he would be able to completely condense his mana. Then, he would be able to achieve the realm of immortals. Luo Chunyang was different from Luo Fu and Guang Pu. He was trained by Luo Fan from the beginning, and he had long received the true teachings of Luo Fan. However, he had never lost the desire to improve. The reason why he was still unable to achieve the realm of immortals was because his foundation was too strong, and it was too difficult for him to break through. Therefore, when he was previously shocked, he was only shocked by Hong Jun's strength. He did not break through the bottleneck because of this, and he did not trigger the last heavenly tribulations because of this. Thank you, Uncle Master. If it wasn't for you, I don't know how many years it would take for Father and Mother to break through the bottleneck. Luo Chunyang bowed to Hong Jun. What does this have to do with me? It's just that they have comprehended it themselves. The Tao fruit and the Tao abyss were deep and boundless. Apart from one's own comprehension, all the external conditions that others could provide were only supplementary. Apart from Master, probably no one could enlighten others with just a few words. Pure Yang, your foundation is incomparably strong. I'm afraid that once you attain the Tao fruit, you'll be able to obtain first yuan of dermic power. You're the only disciple under Master who's comparable to Master. You can't be impatient, nor can you lose confidence, Hong Jun said with a smile. Chunyang understands. Hearing this, Luo Chunyang immediately bowed respectfully. Although Luo Chunyang was the youngest in Luo Fan's sect, he was Luo Fan's grandson and Hong Jun's nephew, but in fact he had lived for tens of thousands of years and had been a guru for a long time. There were countless descendants left in the spirit space, but he was not an ignorant child. He could naturally hear how precious Hong Jun's words were and how much care he expressed for himself. How could he dare to neglect it? Seeing that Luo Chunyang was so obedient, Hong Jun was quite satisfied. He stopped talking and turned his head to analyze the abstract starry sky in front of him. This starry sky was a scene formed by the distortion of the endless starry sky through some strange rules. This distortion was very mysterious. If compared with the original scene of the endless starry sky, it would be easier to understand the mystery of the operation of the endless starry sky. The principle was very simple. It was like drawing a three-dimensional pattern on a piece of white paper. If this three-dimensional pattern was distorted and drawn and compared with the original normal pattern, it would definitely be easier to see what the actual shape of the three-dimensional pattern was. Hong Jun was already in the golden immortal realm, and he also had some understanding of the rules of the endless starry sky. The appearance of the endless starry sky had long been engraved in the depths of his memory. At this time, he compared the scene with the scene in front of him, and gradually discovered the strangeness of the abstract starry sky in front of him. There are countless continents in this endless starry sky. They are being created and destroyed almost every moment. It's impossible to count them clearly, but there are less than 120,000 continents with living beings. There were countless words and images flashing in Hong Jun's eyes. In the blink of an eye, he had a conclusion in his mind. The endless continents were distributed in the depths of the endless starry sky, and almost every two continents were infinitely far away from each other. If one stood on any of the continents without a conclusion, it would be difficult to see the existence of any other continents. But standing here, in front of the scene of the endless starry sky that was distorted in the bright realm, Hong Jun could completely distinguish the continents with living beings. The distribution of these continents in the endless starry sky seemed to be irregular, and whether or not each continent could give birth to living beings seemed to be purely a coincidence. It was just that in these endless continents, the essence of the stars and the special characteristics of some of the continents combined by chance. But in fact, this coincidence was mixed with inevitability. The reason why these 120,000 continents could give birth to living beings was because the location of these continents was incomparably mysterious, and it was in line with some mysterious law. It was precisely because the location of these continents was in line with the law that they gave birth to all kinds of special characteristics. They could combine with some essence in the endless essence of the stars and give birth to living beings. Hong Jun rearranged these continents with living beings in his mind and combined them with the true appearance of the endless starry sky. Gradually, he discovered some kind of wonderful mystery. These continents seemed to form a mysterious formation. Such a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. This thought was instantly grasped by Hong Jun, and it was constantly magnifying. Following this analysis, Hong Jun's body shook slightly, and two rays of gray light suddenly appeared in his eyes. At the same time, he could not help but say, as expected. Chapter 396. Chapter 436 of Soaresi. Among the endless continents, there were less than 120,000 continents with living beings. These continents that had living beings formed an incomparably mysterious and natural formation in accordance with some sort of inexorable law. However, this formation lacked some important points. Thousands of continents were missing from the positions needed by the formation. It was precisely because of this lack that this incomparably mysterious natural formation lost the power that it was supposed to have. Although Hong Jun could see the existence of this natural formation at a glance, he couldn't find the specific power of this natural formation. I'm afraid this complete formation will require 129,600 continents with living beings to be truly complete. Only then will it possess true might. Fortunately, This natural formation hasn't been completely formed yet. If this formation was formed, these 129,600 continents would probably be hidden in the void, and it would be hard for people to detect them, Hong Jun thought to himself. The locations and properties of these nearly 120,000 continents kept circulating in his mind. Countless complex and abstruse words and patterns appeared and flashed across his eyes. Gradually, he had a deeper understanding of the nature of these 120,000 continents. Although he was still unable to grasp the specific characteristics of each of the nearly 120,000 continents, nor could he comprehend what the natural formation formed by the 129,600 continents would look like, he knew how to begin to integrate the living beings on those continents. After thinking about it, he came back to his senses and said to Luo Chunyang, "Your father and mother still need a lot of time to break through to the itinerant immortal realm. You can cultivate with me during this period of time." "Yes, thank you, Uncle Master." Luo Chunyang was overjoyed. He already knew how powerful Hong Jun was. He was overjoyed to hear that he could receive his real teachings. Hong Jun smiled and waved his hand. All kinds of essence chi in the bright world quickly gathered. In the blink of an eye, an ordinary thatched cottage was formed on the mountain peak. Although this thatched cottage was formed by essence chi, it looked like it was made of ordinary grass and wood. There was no abnormality at all, nor was there any aura of essence chi. If Luo Chunyang had not witnessed the entire process of the straw hut's appearance, he would not have believed that the straw hut was actually condensed from essence energy. Although the bright world was created by Luo Fan, it was an incomplete minor kiliocosm controlled by Luo Fu and Guangpu. The primordial energy structure in it was completely different from the primordial world. But Hong Jun was already at the golden immortal realm after all, and his comprehension of the earthly immortal Tao fruit had practically attained the peak. His ability to control the surrounding heavens and the earth had already attained an unimaginable state. Even if he was unable to command the heavens and the earth with his words, it was still extremely simple for him to attain the effect of controlling the various spirit energy in the heavens and the earth through some simple divine abilities. Gathering the surrounding origin energy and condensing it into a thatched hut was naturally relatively simple. You've received Master's true teachings, so your foundation is solid. I'm sure you're not lacking in divine arts, cultivation methods, and the like. Even I don't have any divine arts that I can pass on to you. But after all, I've taken a few more steps than you. Now that I've manifested my great Tao here, you can comprehend as much as you can, Hong Jun said directly to Luo Chunyang. As he spoke, he took a step forward and entered the thatched cottage, ignoring the confusion in Luo Chunyang's eyes. He sat cross-legged and closed his eyes to meditate. "Uncle Master." At this time, Luo Chunyang finally reacted, but he only had time to open his mouth and say one sentence, and then he could not continue. Seeing that Hong Jun was already sitting cross-legged in the thatched cottage with his eyes closed, Luo Chunyang could only smile bitterly. "My Uncle Master is really straightforward. I originally had many cultivation questions to ask, but I didn't expect him to directly display his Tao for me to comprehend. This method is good, but it's really troublesome." Such thoughts flashed through Luo Chunyang's mind. However, what was done could not be undone. Even if he wanted to relieve himself, there was nothing he could do. He could only sit on the ground and start to comprehend Hong Jun's Tao from the thatched cottage in front of him according to Hong Jun's instructions. He absorbed the parts that were useful to him and worked hard to improve his own cultivation realm. As he immersed his mind, the appearance of the thatched cottage gradually changed in his eyes. The straw hut was originally condensed from the origin energy in the bright world. However, the way it was condensed was extremely profound. It was completely constructed according to the various mysteries of the Grand Taos that Hong Jun had comprehended over the past tens of thousands of years. Every single strand of origin energy contained the Grand Taos that Hong Jun had comprehended over the countless years. One could even find all the divine powers and magic arts that Hong Jun had cultivated, and even the mysteries that he had comprehended from the heaven and earth over the years. This could be said to be a naked display of his own cultivation without holding anything back. This was definitely an extremely precious opportunity for Luo Chunyang. If he could comprehend a trace of the mystery, it would definitely not be a problem to trigger the last heaven's test. This was also why Luo Chunyang was willing to give him such an opportunity, because he was the son of Luo Fu and Guangpu. To display his Tao and great Tao without holding back was like revealing his most secret. If it was not someone who was extremely close to him, how could he be willing to treat it like this? Luo Chunyang looked at the thatched cottage in front of him, and the scene in his eyes gradually changed. The thatched cottage gradually disappeared. What replaced it was a strange fruit that fluctuated like a beating heart. This strange fruit was made up of countless tiny dots. The distribution of these dots followed some kind of extremely complicated and abstruse rules. It was as if every dot was incomparably important. They were the core of this strange fruit and controlled a certain aspect of this strange fruit's power. The strange fruit seemed to be fixed there, but it seemed to be hidden in the void. It seemed to be shuttling through space after space, changing the surrounding time and space at every moment. The mystery revealed by each tremble seemed to allow Luo Chunyang to comprehend the mysteries that were thousands of times more profound than what he had comprehended over tens of thousands of years. Is this the fruit of Wei? A bolt of lightning flashed across Luo Chunyang's mind. As this bolt of lightning flashed, the strange fruit in his eyes instantly expanded. From a height of only 30 feet not far away, it suddenly soared into the sky and the earth. It directly filled his eyes and mind, so that there was no space in his mind to accommodate any other stray thoughts. After this fruit of Wei expanded, the tiny dots that made up the fruit of Wei also expanded, and each dot expanded to the size of the fruit of Wei. As the dots expanded, Luo Chunyang finally saw the structure of the dots that he thought were inseparable. They were three-dimensional talismans. They seemed to have some form, but no matter how he looked at them, no matter how hard he tried to remember them, he couldn't see or remember them clearly. He only knew that the three-dimensional talismans contained endless mysteries, including all the mysteries of the great Tao that his Uncle Master had comprehended, including the secrets of his Uncle Master's cultivation from an ordinary innate god to the golden immortal realm. Seeing this, Luo Chunyang's mind was shaken, and he only felt an indescribable temptation emerging from the depths of his heart. His entire mind, his entire sea of consciousness, and his entire divine soul were filled with one sentence. Get it, get it, get it. These words drowned out all of Luo Chunyang's thoughts in an overwhelming manner. It made Luo Chunyang feel that he was gradually losing control of his body. At the same time, he gradually stood up, and his eyes revealed an incomparably greedy light. He walked step by step towards the thatched cottage in front of him. His footsteps were so heavy, as if he was carrying a world on his back, a heaven and earth. Every step he took left one footprint after another on this incomparably hard and almost indestructible mountain. Each of these footprints was several feet deep, like a deep hole in the shape of a foot. One step, another step, another step. After a total of 12 steps, the moment he was about to arrive in front of the thatched cottage, there were two incomparably pure, crystal-clear splendors slowly emerging from the depths of Luo Chunyang's eyes. These two splendors were the light of will and the light of wisdom. What was revealed in them was indescribable and unshakable determination. This determination instantly dispelled the words that seemed to cover the sky and the earth, drowning its mind and consciousness. In the blink of an eye, Luo Chunyang's mind was completely calm. The incomparably huge and overwhelming Tao fruit in his mind had completely disappeared, and what replaced it was only this ordinary thatched cottage in front of him. That was close. I almost couldn't control my Tao heart. After Luo Chunyang came back to his senses, he showed a look of relief, but at the same time, he smiled helplessly. He turned around and looked behind him. The 12 footprints that were like deep holes appeared in front of him. 12 steps. I actually walked 12 steps. It seems that I'm not firm about the Tao I understand. I actually wanted to take it for myself just because I saw a higher level Tao fruit. I wanted to give up my own Tao and follow the other party's Tao. If grandfather knew about this, I'm sure he would be very disappointed. Luo Chunyang thought of this, and the bitter smile on his face became even more intense. However, this bitter smile did not stay on his face for too long. After a while, the bitter smile on his face turned into gratitude. He turned around to face Hong Jun in the thatched cottage and said respectfully, "Thank you for your guidance, Martial Uncle. Chunyang understands. It's good that you understand. Since you understand, then try to understand it well." Hong Jun's voice came from the thatched cottage calmly. The change just now was completely within Hong Jun's expectations. It was also Hong Jun's intentional arrangement. Luo Chunyang's cultivation conditions were really too good. When he was just born, Luo Fan came to refine a defensive treasure for him. When his pure young body was completely mature, Luo Fan specially created the ancestral regression technique for him. After that, his cultivation was even smoother. With Luo Fan's careful guidance and his parents' guidance, he even had his parents' own world for him to cultivate at will. Such good conditions, of course, made his foundation extremely solid and made his future extremely broad, even to the point that he could reach the level of Luo Fan. But at the same time, because of such good cultivation conditions, although Luo Chunyang's understanding of the Great Way had reached a level that Hong Jun and the others couldn't compare with in the same realm, it also made his Taoist heart not as firm as Hong Jun and the others. This did not mean that Luo Chunyang's was easily shaken, but his sense of identity with his own Tao was far less than Hong Jun and the others. Because he always felt the strength of the people around him, he always thought that his Tao was far less than his father, mother, grandfather, and martial uncle. It was just like the more one knew, the more one would realize how small one was. However, this kind of mentality was not good in cultivation. Cultivation was to cultivate the mind. If one wanted to have strong power, he had to have a strong mind. If one wanted to be detached, his mind had to be detached first. If one always thought that his Tao of cultivation was not as good as others, how could he cultivate his Tao to the peak? How could he really achieve something that surpassed others? Luo Chunyang had already spent tens of millions of years cultivating to this point. But after such a long time, he still hadn't achieved Tao. Of course, it was because he wanted to strengthen his foundation, but more importantly, it was because he didn't have confidence in the Tao he cultivated. Luo Fu and his wife were with Luo Chunyang all the time, and they saw every bit of Luo Chunyang's progress. It was like watching a person all the time, and they couldn't notice if he became fat or thin, but they didn't find Luo Chunyang's weakness. They just thought that he was building a foundation and there was no need to worry. But Hong Jun was different. Hong Jun and Luo Chunyang hadn't seen each other for tens of thousands of years. As soon as they met, he found that there was something wrong with Luo Chunyang's cultivation. Therefore, he directly showed his fruit of Tao through the straw hut and directly used the most original and most direct method to stimulate Luo Chunyang's Tao heart, so that Luo Chunyang could know the weakness of his Tao heart. If Luo Chunyang had not been able to hold himself back and had directly walked into the thatched hut, Hong Jun would have directly used his spiritual force to wake him up and dispel the delusion in his heart. Although it would affect his Taoist heart, it would also allow him to clearly see where his weaknesses were. In the future, with targeted cultivation, he would be able to perfect his Taoist heart and directly achieve the Tao after breaking through and establishing. At this time, Luo Chunyang could resist the temptation and not walk into the straw hut. That meant that Luo Chunyang himself had recognized his own weakness, and he didn't need to break and establish. He could directly make his Tao heart perfect through introspection. But it was the best result. Hearing that Luo Chunyang had understood, Hong Jun was really relieved and began to really cultivate. It hadn't been long since Hong Jun stepped into the golden immortal realm. He still needed to carve the earthly immortal Tao fruit, and he also needed to refine the magic power units. Naturally, he needed a lot of time to cultivate. Luo Chunyang bowed to the straw hut again and sat down cross-legged. However, He didn't look at the straw hut in front of him. Instead, he closed his eyes and started to introspect himself. Through the stimulation from before, Luo Chunyang already understood the weakness in his heart. He knew that the lack of confidence in his heart was an obstacle that shackled his progress. At this moment, there were countless memories slowly flowing through his mind. These memories contained everything he had experienced since he was born. Now that he was only a step away from attaining the earthly immortal Tao fruit, Luo Chunyang had already recovered all his memories. Even the memories of the moment when he was just formed in his mother's womb were not blurred at all. In these memories, he saw the happy smiles on his parents' faces when he was just born. He saw the process of climbing on the ground, learning to walk, learning to speak, the experience of meeting his grandfather for the first time, the joy of flying for the first time, and so on and so forth. All of these things that he had experienced were replayed by him, as if he was there. Luo Chunyang's thought process was so swift that it had already arrived at an unimaginable level. Since he was born until now, he had experienced a few tens of millions of years. Every single memory and experience during these few tens of millions of years were in the depths of his memory, and he hadn't forgotten a single bit of it. The amount of memory was so great that it had already arrived at a level that couldn't be described with numbers. However, such an enormous amount of memories and experiences flowed through his mind at a normal pace. Yet the time it took him less than 3 years to experience all the experiences of these few tens of millions of years, as if he was there once again. After experiencing every single bit of these few tens of millions of years, Luo Chunyang seemed as if he had been reborn. The expression on his face gradually became indifferent and calm. The aura that constantly emanated from his body had even become extremely restrained and gentle. His appearance didn't seem much different from before, but he seemed as if he had become a completely different person. He had become even more mature and confident, and even his cultivation seemed to have risen greatly. So I've missed out on so many things. Luo Chunyang opened his eyes, which flashed with an incomparably gentle divine light. Within that gentle divine light, there was an incomparably deep and serene memory hidden within. Since he had experienced his entire life from birth until now with his current level of cultivation, the comprehension he obtained was naturally completely different from the comprehension he had obtained in the past. Even though he was unable to change the experiences in his memories, it was precisely these different experiences that allowed him to comprehend many things, and he comprehended many principles that he had never comprehended in the past. With this process of re-experiencing and re-comprehending, Luo Chunyang had already become even more mature, even more intelligent, and he had an even more complete grasp of his own path. Chapter 397. The heavenly tribulation was separated by space, and the sound of thunder took form. As Luo Chunyang comprehended this, the strange origin energy that belonged to the light realm began to tremble violently under the effect of some mysterious law. The trembling was extremely mysterious, but it had surpassed the nature of the light realm. It had far surpassed the freedom of the minor kiliacosm and reached a level that only the primordial world could possess. As the origin energy rippled in a mysterious manner, the space within a radius of 5,000 kilometers gradually changed. It was as if in an instant, the world within a radius of 5,000 kilometers had left the minor kiliacosm and entered the primordial world. This feeling was extremely mysterious, but it was also extremely obvious. At the instant this feeling appeared, a dark cloud appeared out of nowhere and gathered 100 kilometers above them. At first, the dark cloud was only a few dozen feet in radius, but it grew at an unimaginable speed. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded to a radius of 5,000 kilometers. It covered the sky and earth, causing the world shrouded by the dark cloud to darken. Even if the sun and moon above the light realm shone at the same time, they would not be able to light up the world within a radius of 5,000 kilometers. The moment the dark cloud appeared, Hong Jun, who was in the straw hut, suddenly opened his eyes and looked up. Although the roof of the straw hut was above his head, it could not obstruct his vision at all. It allowed his gaze to penetrate all obstacles and see the dark cloud 50 kilometers above him. I've finally triggered the last heavenly tribulation. It is indeed time to achieve enlightenment. This thought flashed through Hong Jun's mind. With a thought, the straw hut that had evolved from his earth god's fruit of Wei trembled slightly and turned back into endless origin energy. It surged towards Luo Chunyang, who was next to the straw hut, without missing a single trace. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into Luo Chunyang's head and entered his body. Then, it surged into the embryonic form of origin energy that had transformed by 90% but still had no fixed form, causing the embryonic form of origin energy to instantly become 100 times stronger. However, it only became 100 times stronger. The embryonic form of origin energy was still an embryonic form. It did not become complete due to the influx of origin energy. "Thank you, eldest Uncle Master." Luo Chunyang smiled and did not get up. He sat down cross-legged and bowed to Hong Jun. "There's no need to care about anything else. Focus on the tribulation," Hong Jun said calmly. As he spoke, he stood up and took a step forward. In an instant, he had crossed thousands of kilometers and arrived outside the area covered by the dark clouds. A cloud that was 10 feet wide appeared below him. He sat down cross-legged and quietly watched the divine retribution before him. The heavenly tribulation was a tribulation that the cultivator had to face. No matter how powerful the other cultivators were, how high their cultivation was, and how close they were to the cultivator, they could not interfere. If he insisted on interfering, he might cause the tribulation of heaven and earth to increase by thousands of times. It was precisely because of this that when Luo Fan's disciples underwent their tribulations, even though Luo Fan's cultivation had already reached the level where his words were the law and he could command the heavens and the earth, he was still unable to interfere. He could only try his best to strengthen his disciples' cultivation and allow them to overcome the tribulations themselves. Even Luo Fan was like this, let alone Hong Jun. Luo Chunyang had clearly expected this. He did not care about Hong Jun's departure. He only raised his head and looked at the dark clouds that were 10,000 kilometers wide above him. This was the edge of the bright realm. If one looked out from here, it would be the abstract, distorted, and endless starry sky. However, the dark clouds were above the edge and occupied an area of 10,000 kilometers. They directly rushed out of the edge of the bright realm and entered the abstract, distorted, endless starry sky. It was as if the abstract, distorted, endless starry sky was just an ordinary world and was also a part of the bright realm. The changes were extremely mysterious, but also extremely natural. Hong Jun looked at the scene in front of him. Spiritual light flashed in his mind. After the spiritual light, there were traces of enlightenment. The heavenly tribulation is born from the supreme, great Tao. As long as it is within the range of the primordial world, even if it is not within the primordial world, even if it is within the minor kiliacosm or medium kiliacosm, it cannot be avoided. Looking at the scene covered by the heavenly tribulation has probably distorted the rules of the location and created an area that is suitable for the eruption of the heavenly tribulation. As Hong Jun thought this, he faintly felt that his cultivation realm had increased. While Hong Jun was watching the heavenly tribulation and comprehending its mysteries, Luo Chunyang, who was in the center of the heavenly tribulation, felt an increasingly powerful pressure pressing down on him. This pressure descended from the sky. It was emitted by some mysterious existence hidden in the depths of the dark clouds. The strength of this pressure was only slightly noticed by Luo Chunyang at the beginning, but after the time, for a few breaths of time, the strength of this pressure had already arrived at an unbelievable level. It covered the heavens and the earth, and it seemed as if it intended to annihilate all living beings. It was even to the extent that Luo Chunyang felt as if he was facing his father's rage. However, even though this pressure was powerful, it was nothing to Luo Chunyang. Luo Chunyang was still sitting cross-legged during this process. His expression did not change at all. He only raised his head and looked at the dark clouds in the sky indifferently. When the pressure reached its peak, the dark clouds began to roll. During the rolling process, there was a faint sound of thunder that seemed to destroy the world and cause the void to tremble. Following the earth-shattering thunder, the huge dark cloud flashed with bursts of light. When the light flashed, Luo Chunyang seemed to be able to faintly see what was hidden in the depths of the dark clouds. It was endless lightning. These bolts of lightning were incomparably thick and extremely powerful. It was as if every single strand of them could destroy the heavens and earth. An indescribable aura of destruction seeped out from the lightning. In the blink of an eye, Luo Chunyang already understood that the pressure that reminded him of his father's anger was formed by this aura of destruction through some mysterious transformation. With a thought, a jade toad rushed out of Luo Chunyang's body. It instantly grew to a size of 100 feet. It let out a gentle and lingering roar that contained great power. It suddenly descended and blocked Luo Chunyang's body. It raised its head and used its huge eyes to look at the dark clouds above. This jade toad was the magic tool that Luo Fan had given Luo Chunyang when he first met him. When this Dharma artifact was first refined, it was already a great perfection Dharma artifact with 36 layers of restrictions. After so many years of refinement, although this magical weapon was still at the consummate level of 36 restrictions, and still did not give birth to a treasure spirit to become a magical weapon, but it was already one with Luo Chunyang. As Luo Chunyang's cultivation increased, it had long been raised to the peak of magical weapons, and its power was more than 10,000 times stronger than before. At this moment, inside the jade toad, an infinite amount of power was rolling. This power was silver in color, similar to the lunar essence. Even its nature was very similar. However, its nature was pure yang energy. The dark clouds in the sky seemed to have brewed to the extreme. The overwhelming pressure that enveloped Luo Chunyang instantly stagnated and disappeared without a trace. Then, a bright white lightning descended from the sky. In an instant, it tore through the sky and arrived above the jade toad's head. The jade toad's body shook, and it used its back to block. The lightning was like it was made of porcelain. In an instant, it turned into countless tiny pieces and dispersed in all directions. After that, there was an earth-shattering sound from the dark clouds. At this moment, 2 rainbows charged from afar and shot over. In the blink of an eye, they arrived beside Hong Jun. They landed and condensed into 2 figures. They were Luo Fu and Guang Pu. At this moment, Luo Fu and Guang Pu had improved quite a bit compared to before. Although they still hadn't reached the true immortal realm, they had broken through the scattered immortal realm. They only needed the necessary time and effort to truly step into the true immortal realm. Among them, Luo Fu's cultivation seemed to be slightly higher than Guang Pu's. It was obvious that Luo Fu's progress was much smoother than Guang Pu's. At this moment, the couple's faces were filled with anxiety and nervousness. Junior brother and junior sister, you don't have to worry. With Chunyang's foundation, it's definitely not a problem to pass through heaven's test this time. When Hong Jun saw the couple, he knew that they were worried. It was very rare for him to comfort them. Senior brother is right. But as a parent, even if I know all this, I cannot suppress my worry, Luo Fu said to Hong Jun. The worry on his face did not diminish. At this moment, Guang Pu was so worried that she couldn't speak. She ignored Hong Jun and just stared nervously at Luo Chunyang, who was on a mountain peak thousands of miles away. When Hong Jun heard what Luo Fu said, he could only shake his head and didn't speak. Although he had never been a parent, he could imagine the mentality of Luo Fu and Guang Pu at this moment. He knew that it wasn't the time to talk about this matter. Just now, Luo Fu and Guang Pu were obviously at the critical moment of breaking through. Because they sensed the huge changes here, they directly broke through the scattered immortal realm and entered the true immortal realm. They directly came out of seclusion and risked all their previous efforts to rush here. They wanted to watch their son's heaven's test at a close distance, hoping to provide support and help him when necessary. Hong Jun couldn't say anything about their love for their son. At this moment, Luo Chunyang didn't know that his parents broke out of seclusion for him. Under the shroud of the tribulation cloud, Luo Chunyang's connection with the outside world had been weakened to the extreme. At this moment, in his eyes, The entire world was the tribulation cloud above. He couldn't sense anything outside the tribulation cloud. However, this didn't affect him in the slightest. After experiencing his previous life as if he had been reborn, Luo Chunyang's Tao heart was even stronger than before. Moreover, he had greater confidence in the Tao that he cultivated. Nothing in the outside world could shake his mind. Even if his parents didn't come, he wouldn't be sad because of this, and he wouldn't show any flaws. The bolt of lightning from before was like the first hole in a broken dam. Along with that bolt of lightning, there were endless lightning bolts that descended from the sky. Moreover, every bolt of lightning that descended later was hundreds or thousands of times stronger than the bolt of lightning from before. The densely packed lightning bolts that blotted out the sky and covered the earth were like funnels that shot out from every corner of the dark clouds within a radius of 10,000 miles. They concentrated on where Luo Chunyang was and landed on the jade toad. The materials used for the jade toad itself weren't very precious. However, after going through Luo Fan's refinement, these materials didn't affect the power of the jade toad at all. When it was formed, it was already extremely sturdy and hard to break. After going through Luo Chunyang's constant refinement for tens of millions of years, its strength had reached an unimaginable level. Even compared to normal magic treasures, it was not inferior at all. If it wasn't for the restriction of Luo Chunyang's cultivation realm, after such a long time of sacrificial refinement, this magic treasure with 36 restrictions would have become a magic treasure long ago. Such a powerful magic treasure was currently above Luo Chunyang's head, releasing its power to defend against the endless lightning bolts from the tribulation cloud in the sky. It was naturally relatively easy. At this moment, the world was blazing white. Endless lightning bolts pierced through the void, distorting time and space. They directly bombarded the jade toad, but they didn't cause any changes to the jade toad at all. The jade toad's body only trembled slightly before it exploded with unimaginable power. It shattered the endless lightning bolts into pieces, turning them into countless light spots that dissipated in all directions. There were just too many lightning bolts. The number of specks of light that were produced from the shattering naturally reached an unimaginable level. They covered the sky and covered the earth. In a short while, the mountain peak where Luo Chunyang was located was dyed in light, appearing incomparably resplendent. But it was also extremely dazzling. The speed of the lightning was too fast. Only after it shattered and dispersed did countless thunder roars explode in the void. These thunder roars were extremely intense and earth-shattering. It also contained an incomparably mysterious power. If it was just one sound, it would naturally be fine. At most, it would just make one's state of mind waver. However, with such a huge amount of thunder, who knew how many billions of thunderclaps intertwined together? The result was quite astonishing. These thunder roars intertwined in the void and gradually turned into a substance. It condensed into all things in the world. It turned into billions of living beings that descended from the sky. They covered the sky and the earth, and they followed the lightning and pounced towards Luo Chunyang like a funnel. Such a change caused all the sound to stop and gather into strange living beings. Not a single sound spread out. Instead, it made the scene of the tribulation extremely silent. It was like a silent movie. The sound of thunder had actually become a second kind of bombardment besides the lightning. The jade toad protecting Luo Chunyang had already become one with Luo Chunyang after so many years of refinement. Its eyes were Luo Chunyang's eyes, and its body was Luo Chunyang's body. At this moment, Luo Chunyang used the jade toad's eyes to look up. The thunderous roar transformed into billions of creatures that pounced at him. His eyes were filled with shock, but at the same time, they were filled with determination. The change in the tribulation was definitely out of his expectations. He had seen his father go through the tribulation. He had seen countless cultivators go through the tribulation in the spirit space. Even he himself had gone through many tribulations. It could be said that his understanding of the tribulation was not omniscient, but it was definitely unimaginable surpassing most cultivators. However, even though he had seen so many tribulations, it was his first time seeing a tribulation where sound was condensed into living beings and turned into an attack. This completely unfamiliar attack was naturally a great shock to Luo Chunyang. However, it didn't affect his Taoist heart. He didn't lose the confidence to go through this tribulation. No matter how strong it is, it's just one tribulation. I've been cultivating for so long, and I've been nurtured by my father, my mother, my grandfather, and my martial uncle. How can I not go through this small tribulation? The jade toad's eyes were filled with dazzling light. At this moment, the living beings formed by the thunder entered the jade toad's body one by one. Although the living creatures formed by the sound of thunder were physical, their essence was still sound. This kind of sound was naturally destruction from the inside out. Although the jade toad's defensive method was mysterious and profound, and could easily isolate all sounds under normal circumstances, the living creatures formed by the sound of thunder were even more mysterious. They directly passed through the jade toad's defense. After the living beings formed by the endless thunder entered the jade toad's body, they scattered everywhere. Like living beings, they entered the gaps between the 36 restrictions inside the jade toad's body and started to destroy crazily. Following this change, the jade toad began to shake violently. It looked like the surface of water during a violent earthquake. It looked like it could disintegrate at any time. However, even so, the light in the jade toad's eyes didn't change at all. Though the attack method of the thunder was novel, the total amount of power was there. Even though it could attack the gaps between the 36 restrictions, its power was limited. This jade toad was born from Luo Fan, and it had been refined by Luo Chunyang for tens of millions of years. It had long become one with Luo Chunyang. Although Luo Chunyang's cultivation realm was not high enough, it could not become a magical treasure, and the 36 restrictions could not truly merge into one. There were still gaps between them, but between those gaps, it was already filled with endless power. The endless power filled the gaps between the 36 restrictions and connected every restriction. Though it didn't merge in essence, its sturdiness wasn't much different from a true merger. Although the destructive power of the thunderous roar was strong, it was nothing to these powers. Even though there were billions of living beings formed by the thunder, as the jade toad shook, there were countless muffled sounds coming from the jade toad's body. Along with the continuous muffled sounds, the jade toad's shaking quickly weakened. After a while, the muffled sounds subsided and the jade toad's shaking disappeared completely. At this moment, the light in the jade toad's eyes didn't change at all. In fact, it was even brighter and more dazzling. It seemed like it had gained a lot of benefits. Chapter 398. Gu Ling returned, and Hong Jun comprehended the god's test just as Luo Chunyang, who was in the Ming realm, triggered the last heavenly tribulation and was about to undergo the tribulation to attain his Tao fruit. Luo Fan, who was in the Seeking Cave on Mount Buzhou, had a thought. He raised his head and looked towards the sky. At this moment, his eyes seemed to have penetrated through the mountain, the barrier between the cave residences, the infinite void, and the infinite space-time. He directly saw the various scenes that were happening in the Ming realm. Countless lights and shadows flashed in Luo Fan's eyes. In the blink of an eye, Luo Fan understood the cause and effect of everything. I'm finally going to undergo the god's test. This is good. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to find my own Tao. It's pretty good to be able to have such a performance. Luo Fan saw this and smiled. This thought flashed in his mind. Then he retracted his gaze and turned to look into the distance. His gaze penetrated the distant space and saw a man and a dragon trekking billions of miles away. It was Gu Ling, an ancestor sky dragon, who were ordered by Luo Fan to walk step by step towards Buzhou Mountain from billions of miles away. It had been more than 1,000 years since the man and the dragon set off. Although they had not reached the time limit set by Luo Fan for 1,500 years, they were not far from it. After trekking in the untainted land for such a long time and traveling such a long distance, Gu Ling, an ancestor sky dragon's cultivation realm, had made great progress compared to 1,000 years ago. Gu Ling was originally the consciousness of heaven and earth, the soul of all living things. His foundation was extremely strong. After his body was reconstructed by Luo Fan, his cultivation realm rapidly weakened. However, the foundation was still there. If he wanted to improve it, it would be harder than a living being that was created from nothing. Thus, in the span of 1,500 years, he had once again cultivated to the peak of the crossing disaster realm. As long as he survived the God's test, he would be able to achieve a Tao that was more mysterious than when he was the consciousness of heaven and earth and the soul of all living things. He would obtain the earthly immortal's Tao fruit with a boundless future. Gu Ling's progress was something that other living beings, even innate gods like Hong Jun, could only achieve after tens of thousands of years. From this, it could be seen how strong his foundation was in the past. It could also be seen how much help his journey in the primordial world for more than 1,000 years had been to Gu Ling. Old ancestor Tianlong did not cultivate the Tao fruit Great Tao, but his improvement was even faster than Gu Ling. In these 1,000 years, he had already transformed his own strength into the Dragon Emperor's energy that he had yearned for. He had even raised his own cultivation to the Tao realm and transformed his soul into the Dragon Emperor's soul. He possessed thousands of times more power than he had 1,000 years ago. But even so, the heavenly dragon ancestor still acted as Gu Ling's mount and did not dare to neglect Gu Ling naturally. It was because he got along well with Gu Ling. In the primordial world, there were existences that depended on each other. But more importantly, it was because the pressure that Luo Fan brought him was too great. Even if the heavenly dragon ancestor's strength had increased by thousands of times, he did not have the confidence to face Luo Fan's anger. I say, Heavenly Dragon, can you stop pulling a long face all day? It's been more than 1,000 years. Aren't you tired? At this moment, Gu Ling walked forward in boredom and said to the heavenly dragon ancestor beside him. Although old ancestor Tianlong was in the form of a dragon, his expression was like it was made of ice. Not even the slightest change in his expression could be seen. Gu Ling's words were like a gentle breeze blowing past his ear, not causing any change in his expression. The heavenly dragon ancestor had already achieved the Tao. The power in his body had transformed into the Dragon Emperor's energy, and his soul had transformed into the Dragon Emperor's soul. He could control the world within 1,000 miles at any time and fuse with the surrounding world. His perception was more than 100 times wider than Gu Ling's, who was once the consciousness of the world and the spirit of all living things. This perception distance determined the position of the heavenly dragon ancestor in the combination of the man and the dragon. Even though the heavenly dragon ancestor was a mount, he had a considerable amount of autonomy and was relied on by Gu Ling. You've already said this 365 times this year. There's no need to answer at all. The heavenly dragon ancestor's faint voice sounded after a long while. Is that so? That many? 365 times, which is only once a day. It seems that my endurance has improved a lot. Gu Ling heard this and thought, 365 times. When Gu Ling heard that, she was overjoyed, as if she had just discovered something to be proud of. You should save some of your energy to pay attention to your surroundings. This untainted land is not the same as before. Have you forgotten the 2 times you borrowed the great immortal's life-saving divine ability? Old ancestor Tian Long frowned slightly and said to Gu Ling, after so many years, the heavenly dragon ancestor had gradually changed his view. He no longer called the great deity the great deity's realm. Instead, he agreed with Luo Fan's words and called the great deity the great deity, the great deity. However, the impression that Luo Fan had left on him back then was too deep. He did not dare to slight him at all and still called him the great deity. Gu Ling's body trembled slightly when he heard the heavenly dragon ancestor's words, but his expression did not change much. Those 2 times were indeed dangerous, but the great deity that Master left me with was to allow me to comprehend the great Tao in these dangerous times. If I tremble in fear because I only have one great deity left, how can I be worthy of being Master's disciple? Gu Ling said indifferently. Although he appeared to be indifferent, the firmness and confidence in his words were incomparably obvious. He was like an indestructible boulder that had been tempered by wind, frost, rain, and snow for millions of years, unshakable and unmovable. A trace of admiration flashed across the heavenly dragon ancestor's eyes when he heard Gu Ling's words. However, his expression remained cold. He closed his mouth and did not say another word. However, the memories of the past 1,000 years instantly flashed through his mind, allowing him to relive the ups and downs of the past 1,000 years of magnificent experiences. The primordial world was different from the other worlds that they had been in before. In the world that the human and dragon originally resided in, their identities were quite shocking. Gu Ling was the consciousness of the world, the spirit of all living things. He was naturally supreme in the world, and no living being or power could affect him. Heavenly Dragon Ancestor was the strongest person in the world. Although his identity was much lower than Gu Ling's, he was still in existence that no one dared to go against. However, it was different in the primordial world. Their cultivation might be considered passable in the primordial world, but after transforming into the primordial world, their cultivation was extremely weak compared to the power level of the primordial world. There were countless living beings in the primordial world that were stronger than them. There were even many natural environments that could pose a threat to them, enough to destroy the human and dragon. To travel in the primordial world, they had to cross a distance of 3 trillion kilometers. With their cultivation levels that had yet to attain the Tao, the dangers and hardships they encountered were innumerable, and the dangers of life and death they encountered numbered in the tens of thousands. Among them, there were 2 times where with their cultivation, no matter what, they couldn't safely pass it. One of the times was when they were crossing a seemingly ordinary river. In the depths of the river, there was an extremely powerful evil beast that was equivalent to a cultivator that had reached the Tao. It attacked the human and dragon. With a direct attack, it shattered Gu Ling's heavenly way of bones, causing the heavenly way of bones to return to its body to be nourished and repaired. After that, it broke all of Gu Ling's and heavenly dragon ancestors' defenses and all thoughts of escaping. It wanted to devour the human and dragon directly. At that time, it triggered a life-saving magic power that Luo Fan had left behind. It directly killed the evil beast and turned it into life essence to replenish the heavenly way of bones. Not only did it recondense the stubborn heavenly way of bones, it even became stronger than before. The second time, they definitely could not pass it safely. However, when they passed by a valley on a mountain, the valley suddenly changed. Boundless astral wind and baleful chi condensed into an indomitable creature that attracted the boundless astral wind, lightning, fire, and life in the layer of astral wind, lightning, fire, and life. It wanted to kill the human and dragon and absorb their essence. At that time, all of their defenses were destroyed by the boundless astral wind, lightning, fire, and life. In the end, they triggered a life-saving magic power that Luo Fan had left behind, allowing them to escape. Apart from these 2 perilous situations that triggered life-saving divine abilities, there were countless other life-threatening dangers that they had to escape from with their lives on the line. Gu Ling and Heavenly Dragon Ancestor had long been covered in injuries to be able to reach this point. If it were not for the fact that the 2 of them were not simple, they would have long turned into a pile of soil and died somewhere unknown. However, although this experience was dangerous, the benefits for the human and dragon were greater than they had imagined. The rapid increase in their cultivation was one of the reasons, but the other reason was that their Tao hearts, which they thought had already reached the limit, were once again tempered, allowing them to gradually form their own style and Tao. It was also because of this that Gu Ling and Heavenly Dragon Ancestor would get along like this. Gu Ling seemed to be chattering endlessly, as if he did not care about anything. However, in reality, he was determined. He had his own views on everything. and his views were firm. He would not be shaken by any external things. Because of this Tao heart and this temperament, his soul-proving Tao method had refined his soul body to the point where it almost surpassed the body of all innate gods. Although it could not compare to the body of an earthly immortal Tao fruit cultivator, it was not too far off, and it had its own unique advantages. As for Heavenly Dragon Ancestor, because of the experience of over 1,000 years, he clearly understood his own strength and his future path. He was no longer confused about the path ahead, and he clearly saw the path that he should take. At this moment, his steady increase in cultivation was proof of this. They have been reborn. Looks like it's time to prepare something for them. Luo Fan's gaze penetrated the distance, across time and space, and saw the human and dragon's experience over the past 1,000 years. A faint smile appeared on his face. With a thought, he withdrew his gaze. He waved his hand, and a small mountain of materials appeared in his hand. Among these materials, there were quite a number of precious materials, but none of them were truly miraculous and rare. After these materials appeared, there was a gray flame that did not emit any heat, but seemed to be able to distort the void, appearing out of thin air and enveloping these materials. Putting aside the things that Luo Fan refined for Guling and Heavenly Dragon Ancestor, in the Ming world, Luo Chunyang's heavenly tribulation had developed to a new stage. At this moment, the area within 10,000 miles of where Luo Chunyang was had turned into a pitch-black sea of fire. This sea of fire was filled with endless black flames. These black flames were not earth fire, nor were they heavenly fire, nor were they the various thunder fires in the astral wind lightning fire layer. They were star fire. It was a flame that was ignited after endless star essence chi gathered together in an extremely mysterious method and continuously compressed. After going through billions of changes, it ignited. This kind of flame was different from all the flames in the untainted world. It was not even similar to the true sun fire at all. After the flame was ignited, it began to burn everything in the void. Even the true sun fire seemed to be ignited by this kind of star fire. However, when the star fire burned everything in the void, the flame did not grow. Instead, it seemed to be cooking a pot of porridge or a pot of vegetables. What caused the star fire to continuously appear and spread to this extent was the star essence chi that continuously surged in from the void. The Ming world was an incomplete minor kiliocosm that was opened up in the endless starry sky. Around this minor kiliocosm was the abstract, distorted starry sky. Therefore, outside the Ming world, around the Ming world, and even in the Ming world, the most energy was not true sun fire, great sun essence, or lunar essence chi, but star essence chi. The heavenly tribulation was born from the supreme, great Tao. It ignored all space-time barriers and surpassed all obstacles in the world. It could also perfectly use the surrounding environment to transform it into all sorts of incredible tribulations. In the untainted world, there was an endless amount of evil power in the astral wind lightning fire layer. Underground, there was also an immeasurable amount of yin chi, earth fire, and turbid chi. Therefore, no matter how different the heavenly tribulation in the untainted world was, it was still somewhat similar. It could still be easily understood. However, it was different in the Ming world. The bright world was in the endless starry sky, and it was filled with various kinds of primordial chi that were rare in the untainted world. There were no astral winds, lightning, and fire layers above it, and there were no yin chi and turbid chi underground. Therefore, the heavenly tribulation naturally changed, displaying a completely different performance from the heavenly tribulation in the untainted world. Hong Jun, who was watching the process of the heavenly tribulation unfold, had a light of enlightenment in his eyes. The heavenly tribulation had produced such a change that was completely different from the primordial world. This was beyond his imagination. While he was amazed, it also allowed him to comprehend a trace of the laws of the heavenly tribulation. After comprehending the laws of the heavenly tribulation, he understood that all the attacks and power produced by the heavenly tribulation came from the endless starry sky and the endless star essence chi. The endless star essence chi turned into various attacks that Hong Jun was familiar with after going through all sorts of incomparably complicated and unbelievable changes. The lightning, the heavenly fire, the astral wind, the heavenly thunder. This was as if the supreme great Tao had unreservedly displayed all the changes that the star essence chi could produce in front of Hong Jun. To Hong Jun, this was a shocking opportunity. Originally, this should have been an extremely rare opportunity for Guangpu and Luo Fu. However, Luo Fu and Guangpu were wholeheartedly paying attention to Luo Chunyang, who was enveloped by the heavenly tribulation. They watched as Luo Chunyang used the Jade Toad to block and disintegrate the waves of attacks from the heavenly tribulation. How could they still have the mood to comprehend the mysteries of the use of the star essence chi revealed by the heavenly tribulation? This allowed them to let go of this rare opportunity. Poor parents in the world. Not to mention the fact that Luo Fu and Guang Pu didn't sense this opportunity. Even if they knew this opportunity was right in front of them, they would still easily let it go. To them, compared to their sons, all cultivation progress was secondary. In the blink of an eye, the heavenly tribulation had lasted for 9 days and 9 nights. During these 9 days and 9 nights, the heavenly tribulation used a completely unpredictable method to attack Luo Chunyang, who was within the range of the heavenly tribulation. These attacks seemed to cover all kinds of attacks in the untainted world. Astral wind, thunder, fire, water, earth, massacre. Even the extraterrestrial demons came wave after wave. There were tens of thousands of waves coming towards Luo Chunyang. During the 9 days and 9 nights of the heavenly tribulation, the Jade Toad had helped Luo Chunyang block 90% of the attacks. Only today, when the heavenly tribulation had reached the 9th day, did the attacks of the heavenly tribulation break through the Jade Toad's defenses. The Jade Toad had no choice but to disperse and turn into a ray of light to protect the core of Luo Chunyang's spirit, covering his sea of consciousness. It could no longer transform and block the attacks that were crazily surging from all directions. After being attacked for 9 days and 9 nights, the starfire below had already changed its form. It turned into countless fire dragons and fire snakes, forming a huge vortex that attacked Luo Chunyang from all directions. Each of these fire dragons and fire snakes was alive. Their eyes flashed with spiritual light, and they had a relatively complete spiritual consciousness, as if they were real lives. In the void, there were endless life forms of wind, fire, earth, and metal that kept attacking Luo Chunyang. The lightning that fell from the tribulation cloud did not lessen at all. It brewed in the tribulation cloud and fell. At the same time, it triggered countless thunder creatures. They seemed to be extremely chaotic, but in fact contained some mysterious rules and pounced towards Luo Chunyang. At this moment, Luo Chunyang had already stood up. He opened his eyes, which were filled with incomparable determination and sparkling light. The pure yang aura around his body had risen to the extreme, almost turning into a substance. Countless three-dimensional talisman shadows flickered in his body. They condensed into form, but after they formed, they dispersed. Chapter 399. The Great Reincarnation of Yin Yang, Sun Moon. After this mysterious and wonderful trajectory, an incomparably mysterious power appeared in the void. Under the effect of this mysterious power, the various attacks from the heavenly tribulation were almost completely eliminated, leaving only small attacks that were almost undetectable compared to the attacks of the heavenly tribulation. However, for Luo Chunyang, these attacks were close to the limits of what he could withstand. They acted on Luo Chunyang's body. These attacks seemed to cover the heavens and the earth. Almost everything that Luo Chunyang could think of and could not think of was affected. The contents of the attacks even affected everything within Luo Chunyang's body, including his strength, bones, muscles, organs, meridians, spirit, sea of consciousness, apertures. Although the attacks of the heavenly tribulation had been greatly weakened, Luo Chunyang's body was still made of flesh and blood after all. No matter how powerful he was, it was still rather difficult for him to withstand the power of the heavenly tribulation. Luo Chunyang's body was enveloped by the endless attacks, both inside and outside. Every part of his body was constantly collapsing and shattering under this attack. Then, under the effect of Luo Chunyang's vitality, they constantly reformed and recovered. In the process of collapsing and shattering and reforming, his body was constantly strengthening. Furthermore, these attacks were originally aimed at the divine soul and the sea of consciousness. However, the light formed by the jade toad blocked the attacks, preventing them from invading his sea of consciousness or harming his spirit. It was exactly because of this that Luo Chunyang had enough mental strength to resist the attacks of the extraterrestrial demons that had appeared out of thin air and were constantly evolving in his sea of consciousness. These extraterrestrial demons had already appeared on the third day of the heavenly tribulation. Moreover, as soon as they appeared, they manifested endless scenes, infinite worlds, and infinite space-time in Luo Chunyang's sea of consciousness, targeting all of his weaknesses and obsessions. If it wasn't for the fact that Luo Chunyang had recollected his experiences over the past tens of millions of years, which made him feel as if he had been reborn and polished his heart to the point that it was as clear as a diamond, he would have already fallen into the infinite saint realm. However, the situation was different now. Presently, Luo Chunyang was wandering amidst the boundless and profound scenes created by the heavenly devil, yet he still had the energy to control his body to weaken the attacks of the heavenly tribulation in the outside world. It was even to the extent that he intentionally let some of the attacks affect his body so that he could use them to temper his body and improve his body during the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, another primordial world appeared in Luo Chunyang's sea of consciousness. In the primordial world, Luo Chunyang's identity was no longer Luo Fan's grandson. He was a postnatal living being who had just undergone the heavenly tribulation. Instead, he had become the master of the entire untainted land. He could destroy the void, move mountains and drain seas at will, travel the whole world in a flash, tear the infinite space-time at will, and even enter and exit the chaos at will. Hundreds of millions of innate gods, whose cultivation was even higher than his grandfather's, served him by his side. The entire untainted land could even evolve into billions of beautiful sceneries according to his will. Everything went according to his will. He sat on the heavenly palace in the void, overlooking the untainted land's vicissitudes of life, the world's creatures, and creating worlds at will. Everything went according to his will. That feeling of eternity, detachment, freedom, and control of everything had reached the extreme of any living being's imagination. Endless praises and flattery came from the mouths of cultivators who were more powerful than his grandfather. Countless women who were more powerful than his mother danced in front of him. Countless women who were more beautiful than his mother snuggled up to him. A high-spirited and insufferably arrogant feeling erupted from his heart. However, although such a scene was in front of him, although such a feeling was in his heart, although everything was so real, the light in Luo Chunyang's eyes was still dazzling and sparkling. He did not waver at all, nor did he feel lost at all. His body and mind were immersed in it, but they also drifted away. That scene was as if he was immersed in his past experiences and reliving his life. He was actually using the primordial world scenery created by the extraterrestrial demon to refine his Taoist heart, to increase his cultivation. At that moment, he seemed to be completely immersed in it, but in reality, he was extremely clear about how fake everything before him was. He understood what kind of existence he was. All the enjoyment in front of him, all the extreme status, all the extreme power, all the extreme cultivation were like smoke in the past. They stirred up endless waves in his heart, but they passed without a trace. After they disappeared, his heart became calmer and clearer. At this moment, the tribulation cloud in the void shook. In an instant, the creatures formed from the endless attacks in the 10,000 miles of the world came to a complete halt. An indescribable pressure appeared in the void. It directly affected Luo Chunyang's body and mind. At the same time, The primordial world in Luo Chunyang's sea of consciousness also underwent a drastic change. The countless living beings in the world instantly changed. From their originally extremely obedient and respectful appearance, they turned into extreme hatred and disdain. At that moment, the entire world began to collapse. From the outside, it approached him at an indescribable speed. In the process, it constantly turned into a hazy, chaotic appearance. It swept the sky and earth as it approached him. It was as if the world was collapsing. It wanted to turn him into a part of the chaos and destroy his soul. You've angered the world, which is why such a tribulation has descended. You've killed billions of living beings. Supreme Lord, save us. You're a demon in human form. We've served you for billions of years. Now that the world is collapsing, you're actually unwilling to help us. You are the greatest demon in the boundless world of the chaos void. You killed your father, your mother, your ancestors, and your elders. You stole all the vitality in the world. Now that you've caused the world to collapse, we'll sacrifice you to the world in exchange for the world's rebirth. Supreme Lord, the world's destruction is imminent. Only Supreme Lord can stop it. Supreme Lord, please give up your body and soul. Use your supreme power to stop the world's destruction. Endless curses, endless hatred, endless pleas, endless cries, endless accusations, and so on. Almost all the negative sounds that could be found in the world came from the mouths of the countless living beings and poured into Luo Chunyang's ears. If an ordinary person, even an ordinary innate god, or even an innate god who had attained the Tao, fell into such a situation, his Taoist heart would be directly shattered by the endless negative sounds. His soul would sink into the abyss, and he might even directly sacrifice himself to listen to the endless pleas of the voices to protect the world. However, Luo Chunyang did not move at all in the endless, noisy, negative sounds. Compared to before, his eyes had changed, but they were more crystalline and more resplendent. At the same time, the light of enlightenment was constantly flickering in his eyes. It seems that we've reached the final juncture. This wave should be the last wave of the heavenly tribulation's attack. After a while, he spat out such a sentence. Although this sentence was spoken softly, it instantly spread through every inch of the void of the untainted world that the extraterrestrial heavenly demon had evolved, like thunder. After this voice, time seemed to have stopped. Even the collapsing world and the chaos that was sweeping towards Luo Chunyang from all directions instantly stopped, let alone the countless living beings that were criticizing Luo Chunyang. You should be the extraterrestrial heavenly demon that grandfather mentioned, right? Thank you for refining my Taoist heart these days. Luo Chunyang smiled, stood up, and said faintly. As he said this, his figure gradually changed. From the supreme appearance that was originally like the emperor of the world, controlling everything in the world, he gradually changed into the appearance of an extremely ordinary young man. His body was filled with extremely dense, pure yang aura, and it was exactly the same as his body outside. There was no difference at all. As his body changed, the world around him gradually changed as well. The void faded, and the chaos faded. Gradually, it turned into a void with a radius of 1,000 miles and a height of 100 miles. In the void, the endless living beings continuously melted, turning into strange, sinister-looking, pitch-black living beings that were constantly shifting and filled with terror. Based on the appearances of these living beings, one could find their origins among the extraterrestrial heavenly demons that had appeared in the past. They were clearly the extraterrestrial heavenly demons that had been drawn out by the heavenly tribulation. Disperse. Luo Chunyang raised his hand and clenched it gently. The space with a radius of 1,000 miles and a height of 100 miles trembled slightly, producing a strange power that immediately took effect on the endless extraterrestrial heavenly demons floating in the air. In the blink of an eye, the endless number of extraterrestrial demons collapsed. One by one, they were reduced to dust. Amidst the shrill cries, they gradually disappeared without a trace. Although the extraterrestrial heavenly demons had only appeared for 6 days and 6 nights, they did indeed possess the ability to change the perception of time. In Luo Chunyang's senses, 10 million years had passed. During that time, the changes in the world he had experienced had reached an uncountable level. Through the various experiences of the changes in the world, Luo Chunyang comprehended many things that he had comprehended from his own experiences, but he could not completely comprehend them. His cultivation had increased greatly once again. That was why he had chosen to immerse himself in the world created by the extraterrestrial heavenly demons. He was not like Luo Fan and the others, who had destroyed the world and destroyed the extraterrestrial heavenly demons after discovering that the world was created by the extraterrestrial heavenly demons. After Luo Chunyang destroyed the extraterrestrial heavenly demon in his sea of consciousness, he focused all his attention on his own body with a single thought. At this moment, the tribulation clouds in the sky had changed in a way that had not happened in the past 9 days and 9 nights. Luo Chunyang had been extremely clear-headed during the process of overcoming the heavenly tribulation. With the guidance of his parents and grandfather, he naturally knew that this was the final wave of the heavenly tribulation. Although he looked relaxed, his eyes shone with extreme seriousness. With a slight shake of his hands, even more profound and complicated trajectories than before appeared. The power that had appeared out of nowhere instantly increased by 10 times. The attacks that he had deliberately let in to refine his body were instantly dispelled. At this moment, the tribulation clouds in the sky had already turned into a gigantic vortex. A huge, faintly discernible face gradually appeared in the vortex. This face was very strange. It seemed to be the face of a human, but it also seemed to be the face of a dragon, but it also seemed to be the face of a wolf. It seemed to be constantly changing. It was incomparably strange, incomparably mysterious, as if it could be found in the face of any living creature, but it was definitely not the face of any living creature. The face was thousands of kilometers wide. When it opened its eyes, there was emptiness and chaos inside, as if countless thoughts were weaving together. It also seemed to be completely blank, as if it was not thinking about anything at all. After the face appeared, it opened its mouth as if it was roaring furiously, but there was not a single sound in the air. It was extremely strange. Just as the face closed up and gradually faded away, the world within a radius of thousands of kilometers suddenly underwent an earth-shattering change. The sky collapsed. The endless attacks that the heavenly tribulation had sent out earlier condensed into billions of living beings, dispersed at this moment, and turned into attacks of their own. As the void collapsed, these attacks fused with the spatial fragments produced by the collapse. These spatial fragments that contained a myriad of attacks were like magic treasures controlled by cultivators that had attained the Tao, and they left numerous trajectories that contained the grand Taos of the heavens and the earth in the shattered space as they charged towards Luo Chunyang. These trajectories were extremely mysterious, and they increased the destructive power of the spatial fragments by more than 10,000 times. These boundless spatial fragments shot toward Luo Chunyang at high speed, carrying with them a destructive power that could annihilate the heavens and the earth. They also carried an indescribably powerful might, causing any living being to feel an immense pressure on their souls. They even felt as if they couldn't muster any will to resist. Seeing the endless spatial fragments draw out trajectories that contained the laws of the world towards him, Luo Chunyang no longer dared to ignore the mysteries of the laws of the world. Even though he discovered that the laws contained many martial arts that would greatly benefit him, he did not dare to use them to comprehend the laws of the world like he did with the attacks from the endless sky demons. In an instant, pure yang aura that was so dense that it seemed solid spread out from Luo Chunyang's body. At the same time, the embryonic form of magic power that had almost taken shape in his meridians began to circulate rapidly. Profound and complicated mantras flowed through his mind. As he did so, a faint golden light gradually appeared around his body. The pure yang aura seemed to have found a structure under the golden light. It gradually condensed and mixed with the golden light. Although his speed was fast, the spatial fragments were even faster. When he was done, the moment the golden light and the pure yang aura fused together, the endless spatial fragments had already arrived beside him, drowning him in an earth-shattering manner. Luo Chunyang's eyes widened, and he let out a loud shout. His hands instantly drew an extremely natural and seemingly ordinary trajectory that seemed to contain all the mysteries of martial arts and the mysteries of the laws of the world. He slapped forward. As he slapped forward, the golden light that had appeared beside him and fused with the pure yang aura around him trembled slightly. Then, two huge existences condensed in front of him, a sun and a moon. The sun and moon were separated from the golden light. Although the sun was golden, it was 100 times more dazzling than the original golden light. The moon was silver, but its light was extremely pure. It was impossible to tell that it had been separated from the golden light. The sun and moon were separated in front of his left and right hands. They were huge, but they were extremely harmonious and natural. There was no sense of conflict or repulsion. They only reflected and promoted each other. It was as if there were countless lines and countless channels connecting the two, constantly flowing and communicating. This was a divine ability that Luo Chunyang had comprehended based on the various basic divine abilities that Luo Fan had taught him and the structure of the bright world, the yin-yang sun and moon great reincarnation. Luo Chunyang had only comprehended the embryonic form of this divine ability before going through the heavenly tribulation. However, after reliving his own experiences and meditating as if he had been reborn, this divine ability had been perfected by him. Even though it was still inferior to the various divine abilities that Luo Fan had created and had many flaws, it was the most suitable divine ability for Luo Chunyang. It contained the Tao that Luo Chunyang had comprehended himself, as well as all the mysteries of heaven and earth that he had comprehended over the past tens of millions of years. When he used it, its power was even stronger than the various divine abilities that Luo Fan had taught him and the various divine abilities that Luo Chunyang and Guang Pu had taught him. The reason for this was that this divine ability was created by Luo Chunyang, so he could unleash all of its power. However, the various divine abilities that Luo Fan and Guang Pu had taught him were different. After the yin-yang sun and moon great reincarnation was unleashed, the endless spatial fragments collided with it. What followed the collision was an incomparably strange silence. The sun and moon that were unleashed by the yin-yang sun and moon great reincarnation instantly left Luo Chunyang's hands and began to move around his body in an extremely complicated yet natural trajectory that contained the mysteries of the great Tao. The endless spatial fragments were like rivers flowing into the ocean. They surged into the sun and moon without missing a single one. None of them were able to break through the obstruction of the sun and moon and get close to Luo Chunyang. Amidst these boundless spatial fragments, every single fragment's circulation and trajectory of impact contained unbelievable profundities, and it contained supreme martial techniques and Tao arts. If it was a cultivator with extraordinary natural talent, then the cultivator would even be able to comprehend a myriad of martial techniques, Tao arts, divine abilities, and techniques from it. However, these spatial fragments were completely useless against the yin-yang sun and moon great reincarnation that was most suitable for Luo Chunyang. In the blink of an eye, they were completely absorbed. The world turned into nothingness. In the depths of this nothingness, there seemed to be endless starlight. After the endless spatial fragments disappeared, the tribulation cloud in the sky shook slightly. In the blink of an eye, it completely collapsed and dissipated. Not long after, it disappeared without a trace. As the tribulation cloud disappeared, the space within a radius of 10,000 kilometers seemed to flow backwards. It completely returned to the scene before Luo Chunyang's tribulation. Even the mountain below Luo Chunyang, which had been reduced to dust during the tribulation, had reformed. It looked like nothing had happened, and everything looked the same as before.